Are we ready? So I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:01. And we'd like to report on an action in closed session. Kathy recused herself from the discussion of 2.3. The board voted 4-0 to readmit expelled student number 1901 to the Fort Bragg High School with expulsion terms removed.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
I'm going to read a couple statements before we move on to public participation. So as authorized by Governor's Emergency Executive Order issued March 12th, the Fort Bragg Unified School District Board of Trustees will conduct Board of Education meetings via video conference telecommute until further notice. Board members of the public who wish to address the board during this meeting are asked to please try to prior to the meeting, but we understand that you may want to send a comment in during the meeting. But you can email boardmeeting@fbusd.us, and that link is in the board packet if you're viewing online. Staff will make all attempts to share and record any submissions prior to or during the meeting. However, depending on timing, late submissions may be provided to the board after the conclusion of the meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes, each approximately 390 words, and speakers are cautioned that under California law, no person is immune from liability for making intentionally false or defamatory comments regarding any person simply because those comments are made at a public meeting. And then, so we will move on to 3.3, which is public participation on non-agenda items. And I do not believe we have any of those. Right? All of these are, okay. I'll wait a moment just in case anybody frantically emails Anna. Okay. All right. And then we'll go to 3.4. Are we okay? Are we going to slow down? Or just have Scott add or join when he, okay. All right. So is there anything that needs to be moved or pulled from the agenda this evening? No?
No, I don't think so.
Then I'll ask for approval of the agenda, please.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I just went to the YouTube channel to see if we were rolling from the link that was on our website, and I am not seeing the live stream happening yet, and I don't know if there's a lag. So I just want to make sure that we're moving before we go any further and start having big discussions.
I'll text some folks.
So Nate, I know that you're there. Are you seeing that we are moving and grooving here? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Nate. I am looking at the FBUSD television channel and I'm hitting refresh like crazy and I'm using the link. Anna, can you test and see if you've got it?
I'm testing and I don't see it either.
I text a fan and they can see us right now, but I can't.
Oh, they can.
I can't verify if they saw the very beginning. I don't know if anyone's watching from the right on time. Let me ask. The link wasn't working on the website, but had to subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is the report I have.
I'm just doing a search to see if it'll come up in another way. Okay.
Nate, could you send us the link? Okay, so Nate is going to send the link and I will refresh the website with the new link as quickly as I can.
Okay, it's on. Hold on. It just, okay, so here's what you need to do. It's now playing. And there are 7 people watching.
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the person I'm talking to said that they went directly through YouTube, not from the homepage. And it's working.
Okay.
I'm not getting it from the homepage.
So the link is now working from the homepage. So, okay. I just want to make sure that that our folks have the ability to watch if they want to watch. So I feel better about it now.
Okay.
It looks like the link
is working now.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So I just want to, we have all those in favor of approving the agenda?
Yes.
4-0. Yeah, because Scott's not here yet, I don't think.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll move on to the patriotic exercise for Trustee Makala.
Okay. Well, as everyone knows, that Juneteenth, which was June 19th, super important day commemorating the end of slavery. And I have a video that I was going to share my screen, but Anna's going to share hers so that we know it works. That can tell us more about it.
My name is Marcia Chatelain. I'm a professor of history and African American studies at Georgetown University. I'm a historian of African American life and culture. Juneteenth is a commemoration holiday of June 19th, 1865. So when a group of African Americans in Galveston, Texas, received the news that they indeed were free. President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, but news of the end until 1865. Since then, Juneteenth has been a day of commemoration
So Anna, can you put that link on our website, because the sound, at least from my end, was really muffled.
Yeah. Thank goodness for closed captioning.
You know, the captions were great. So if you could get that up on our website, or so that folks can see it, that would be great. Thank you for finding that, Mary.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I wish the sound had been better. She was good, but at least we could read what she was saying.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was just me, but I'm glad that we can go back and look at it later. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have moving on to acknowledgements. Becky, do you want to take us through the?
Hi. Okay, sorry, I was muted. Gotta love this. Okay, we have Mendocino Coast Children's Fund. We want to thank them for $8,500 for educational material for students, $10,000 of Harvest Market gift certificates, 150 gift certificates for a pair of shoes from Feet First. Joanne Phillips for her donation of $100 to support emergency summer meal services during COVID-19. And then moving on, and just to say also, we've been doing the providing meals, and Children's Fund has been hugely integral in making that happen. And we've been able to partner with the food bank. So I don't know if people know that Amanda down at the food bank has also prepared bags of food for folks, thanks to the James G. Cummings Foundation for their donation. So we have the Children's Fund, we have the Cummings Foundation, really providing for our families. So please, if you have children 18 years and under, come down to Redwood or Dana Gray on Tuesdays. Get a bag of food. You'll get a paper. Go to the food bank. You can get more stuff. The great thing about the food bank is they're able to give food that the school district can't give. Like, we can't give out a dozen eggs. So things of that nature. So thank you to all those people. Thank you to the Mendocino Children's Fund for continuing to help us with our families and our kiddos. And thank you to Joanne Phillips for your donation for the summer meal service program as well. Do you want me to keep going, Kathy?
Yes, please.
Okay, the following staff has submitted their intent to retire. Louis Bernardini, a well-loved custodian at Redwood, Julie Castillo, our wonderful garden teacher, John Matson, another custodian at Redwood, Greg Ponce, another custodian at Redwood, and Tom Wilson. Tom is one of the longest standing employees we've had in Fort Bragg Unified, so a shout out to him. Greg is also one of our long-standing employees, and a shout out for him. Greg, John, and Louie have been a team at Redwood for a lot of years, so that's going to be a huge loss to them. And Miss Julie Castillo has touched thousands of lives. My son will be 19 in August, and he still has very fond memories of Julie Castillo. So thank you, Julie, for all your wonderful work. And Tom Wilson, I don't know what we're going to do without him. He's been here a lot of years. Someone had made the comment to me, hey, Becky, there's also another custodian retiring, and that person is John Robledo, but we had him on a previous board agenda, which is why he's not on here now. But John Robledo is also another employee that's given us lots and lots of years. So thank you to our retirees. And let's see. That's it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for all of the generous monetary donations, and as well as the time and lives that our employees have touched. Thank you very much for that. So now we're moving on to communication. We do have some communication, but most of it is coming through the public participation. One thing I wanted to talk to quickly about is the board chats. So since we are meeting virtually, board, do you think we should try to run the board chats before the meetings or not?
I'd like to
it's
try.
a good idea. Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Okay, I have 2 yeses.
It can't hurt.
Okay.
Give it a go. Sure.
All right. Okay, so we'll see. There's rumor on the street that we might have a meeting next month, so maybe we'll try it then. And we'll bring them up on the regular meetings, unless it's a really, well, that would be a special. So let's go ahead and try it on the special and see how it goes. So we'll do that. And then also I received an email from Greg Isom just to remind us, that we need to start to form our Citizens Oversight Committee. So we'll make sure that we put that on the agenda next month. But please, if anybody is interested in being part of our bond Citizens Oversight Committee, then to please email Wendy or myself, and we'll get you on that committee. Is that a quarterly meeting?
It's kind of an as needed,
Okay.
but the group itself can make that decision once they start how often they want to meet.
Okay. So for public information, it's not a huge time commitment, but we do need that to get feedback from the public. Okay. So please let Wendy or I know if you have any interest.
And just in communication, Kathy, I believe Greg Isom also contacted us about getting an RFQ, a request for qualifications. Am I saying that correctly? Out on the papers, in the newspaper, so that we can begin collecting, or not in the newspaper. Barry, you're here, and Wendy, you're here. It's about contacting people who.
Architects. We'll be sending it out for architects, and sending it out to, I forget how many, tomorrow, and expect them back the end of July.
And they have to be DSA approved, is that correct? Or there's some kind of caveat, isn't there?
Well, they have to meet the requirements, the qualifications to work on schools, yes.
Okay.
Okay, did anyone else receive any communications?
I received a couple phone calls from parents, and one in particular, it was shortly after our last meeting or in between. So they probably hadn't seen the plan for returning back to school or what that looks like, the reopening, and just wanted to stress that the unintended consequences of being closed with all students, but especially teenagers and high-risk activities, suicide, depression, and domestic violence, just to be aware that to balance, emotional decisions with cerebral decisions when making the reopening, to really concentrate on balancing that first, safety first. And also another parent just hoping that we have something in the plan that that it's evaluated more, very frequently and adjusted as appropriate and safe. Because in schools past, you make a plan, you check the box, you wait to see how it goes for the year, and you go next. And that's just what the history of school life is for families. And so that was the fear of this parent, that this is a living fluid document, and they just want to make sure that was represented.
Okay. Anybody else receive any communication? Board members? Okay. All right. We are going to move to public participation on agenda items. So we do have some public comment, and I just want to read a statement first. The following public comments were received by the district using the telecommuting public comment email address. For ease of public participation, it will be read into record by a district employee. This should not be construed as an endorsement of this comment by the district or as the position of the district. So, but I'm actually going to read them. Or are you, Anna? Because it says district employee. I'm not really an employee, but.
Do you want me to read them?
Well, I don't mind reading them. I was just reading the statement that we were. I'm fine with reading them.
Okay, then rock on.
Maybe we'll switch it up because it might get tired of my voice. All right. So Anna's going to share with them. I just thought, since it's a lot, you might want to follow along instead of listening to my voice. So Kathy Westphal is our first letter. I have 4 kids in the school district. I am requesting 2 things. The first is no masks while our kids go to school. It is not good for them to breathe. I would really like to see our school take the lead and just having a normal school year and not doing the 2 days a week segregated at 3 days a week at home. I would also like our kids to get back to sports such as soccer in the fall. Once one school takes the lead and opens up the sports in the fall, the other schools will follow and give our kids a normal year. These guidelines are simply that. They are guidelines. They are not laws or rules. If there is an increase in COVID, then we make changes in our hospitals already. Either way, local doctors have informed us that everyone's going to get it anyway, so why are we changing our lifestyle? My sister had COVID and she's fine. Yes, some will die. I understand if that is horrible, but most will live. This is a small community and we have kept ourselves sheltered in place for 100 days now, and our town does not have COVID. Well done. Respectfully, Kathy Westfall. This is a second letter. This is from Christine Sanchez. I know that finding a way to reopen our schools in a way that will make everyone happy and keep everyone safe is impossible. I appreciate that you have done your best to juggle parents' desires and state requirements. Thank you. With that being said, please find below why I believe neither option in the draft will work as outlined. Staggering attendance days with classrooms split but sharing the same instructor presents a large problem of the instructor becoming a common link between all students. If a student in Group A is a carrier without symptoms or simply has the virus for a few days before being systematic, then all students in Group A plus the instructor become exposed. The instructor could then unknowingly expose all of the students in Group B, which makes the separation pointless. Distance education will required online classroom times present a problem with those parents who are still working. Due to the possibility of exposure to online child predators and the availability of a large amount of child inappropriate content, I do not permit my children to be online unsupervised. This limits their access to online classrooms to the evening or weekends. I propose that lessons are provided in a recorded format, viewable at any time with the same homework requirements that are detailed in the plan. I believe this would be beneficial to all students. Instruction could be reviewed as a refresher as well if additional help or clarification is needed. Again, I realize that coming to a decision for any plan is difficult, and I thank you for considering my thoughts. Sincerely, Christine Sanchez. This is for Tina Rose, 8.2.1. So dear Fort Bragg Unified School District Board of Trustees and Superintendent Walker, thank you for all the hard work that has gone into the plans to return to school. I reviewed the draft proposal and know that there are a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration with a plan such as this. I would like to add to the discussion. I apologize for the length and will try to keep it easy to read. Is there a breakdown of the information from the parent survey about how many of the projected 1/3 of parents are from each school site? Is the projected 1/3 of parents homeschooling across the board for all school sites? Has there been a discussion to send out a bit more comprehensive survey with an option for parents to choose a full return to normal as an option as well? I know this is going out on a limb, but would give a good indication of who would be willing to accept less strict standards with a signed waiver on file, if that is a feasible option. Lakeport Unified sent out a very comprehensive survey. There is currently only one case in Fort Bragg. I am aware that this always subject to change. However, if we are still only at one case in August, I think we should have a plan to return with the most minimal changes, i.e. hand washing and sanitizing and potential face coverings. My children will struggle with the face coverings all day long. They cannot wear them without issues for a quick trip to the store. I am a parent that would be willing to return to school without the need for modifications and would sign a waiver to allow that to happen. Pushing the school start to after Labor Day should be an option to be explored. That will give more time to assess what is happening with COVID in the state and county and local area. I understand that there will be potential negotiation issues with teachers, but this being unprecedented times, it should be brought to the table. I would be a proponent of lessening the scheduled vacation weeks. I think that it would be safe to remove the temperature check as a requirement that has been shown to not be a good indication of sickness by our own PHO. Most importantly, I would like to return to a 5-day-a-week model. If it needs to be broken down into an AM/PM 5-day-a-week model as the worst case, children need to return to school 5 days a week. A proposed split A-B model will effectively only return the kids to the classroom 2 out of the 5 days a week. That leaves 3 days a week of potential unsupervised children. I think that is a potential disaster in the making, but understand the reason for it. I appreciate the check-in Zoom classroom and think that is a must if we must attend for 2 days, but think that it isn't the most effective way for the students to return to learning. For student mental well-being, I believe there needs to be some special consideration to allow children to be within their core social group with the AB split. They have been taxed mentally with their shelter in place and will continue to be stressed with this return to a different normal and need to have some familiarity and safety for this return. They should be able to request a request to be placed with their social core, since the social aspect of school is being removed. This, I would hope, to be a priority for consideration. Currently, we are on a semester schedule. Has there been consideration of doing a trimester schedule with 3x3 classes for the 9-12 grade group, allowing more breaks during the daily teaching schedule for both students and teachers? High school teachers have not had to do block schedule teaching, and this is a huge change for them. Hopefully, this isn't long-term, but they will need to teach a whole year within a semester/trimester. I feel it is necessary to make sure that there is action and review on a frequent basis to make changes to the policy as warranted, with the idea to return to normal as quickly as the changes allow. Things are rapidly changing with COVID, and as quickly as there is action items need to deal with a case or an outbreak, we also have the thoughts to lessen restrictions as quickly. Thank you for your time and consideration in allowing parents to share their thoughts. Thank you for having our children's mental and physical safety and well-being as your priority. I appreciate the job that each of you do. Same 8.2.1. My name is Mary Pardini. I have 2 children enrolled in Fort Bragg Unified School District. My oldest will be a sophomore at Fort Bragg High School, and my youngest will be entering 8th grade at Fort Bragg Middle School. I am writing on behalf of the proposed plan for the 2021 school year. I don't have all the answers, but I would like to express how important I feel it is to have school be attended 5 days a week, even if it is for early release days. I have close family members with social anxiety, and both my niece and nephew who are currently enrolled at FBUSD. My sister struggles with getting them to school to attend regular classes. I've watched a decline in their social behavior the last few years and stress to them and my sister that attending school regularly, although may be hard for them, is so important. It helps with teaching them responsibility, accountability, and makes for more productive adults. Last school year, they did attend more regularly, and my nephew, who is 17, began working at the senior center. There was also visible changes with my niece, beginning to talk about friends and even attend a school dance. My fear is that attending school only 2 days a week will put a huge step backwards in their progress. On a personal note, both of my daughters, who are active in student council, 3 sport athletes, and carry a 3.5 plus GPA, really struggled with social distancing. It was difficult for both of them to understand concepts and material without the support they would have received on a daily basis from not only teachers, but also their classmates. I watched my high school student go through periods of depression where she wouldn't get out of bed, anger where she wanted to just give up and complete no schoolwork. My younger daughter did not show the anxiety and anger until the end of the school year. I do not want my child to go through next school year battling with the same feelings of failure and depression. The distance learning took 2 good students and potentially could have ended their school year without completing their classes with passing grades. It was daily that they needed encouragement and guidance on schoolwork, but not all students have that support. I know how difficult it was for my own children in their education and emotional health. I could not even imagine for the students who struggled academically before COVID. Both households work full-time and have long-standing careers. Neither parent or step-parent are available to be home during the day on the proposed school days and they would be off. This leaves 8 hours a day, 3 days a week that my teenagers' children would be left alone to complete assignments and stay on track. I do not feel this is going to be beneficial to my children's education. I believe with the 1/3 of parents who may choose to keep their students home would lower the class size, allowing for social distancing. Staggered release times for classes would allow for less students' interaction in hallways, taking preventative measures like hand washing, hand sanitizing stations, wipe down desks at the end of each class period, and taking the students' temperatures prior to entering in first period. The current health order as of June 19th, 2020 is allowing for almost all businesses to open with precautions in place. I don't want my children's education and mental health to be in jeopardy while you are able to shop in a change box store with unlimited amount of people. I would like the school board to look at what is best for our community. With less than 1% of Mendocino County's population who have tested positive for the virus, no deaths, and very few who have been hospitalized, I believe we are at a low risk. As of the day of this meeting, there are no active confirmed cases in Fort Bragg. I believe limiting the on-campus school days in Fort Bragg Unified School District students would have long-lasting negative effects. I appreciate all your hard work on this and also all that you do for our students. Thank you, Mary Pardini. Okay, 8.2.1, Angie Daniels. After reading the draft for reopening schools, I have the following questions. The document states an assumption that the schools are fully engaged in remote learning, then later goes to a described open campus instruction when permissible. What guidelines are being used to determine if that is permissible, or if it is permissible? How flexible is the option to receive remote learning versus in-class learning? Can a family change their mind multiple times, daily, weekly? When on-campus instruction is permissible and some families opt to continue receiving remote learning, is there an exception or expectation that the remote learning is mirroring the in-class instruction and assignments? I am concerned about attendance, equity of instruction, grading, teacher prep, having enough time to check in with students in secondary grades as they have 4 teachers in a day to connect with, tech resources available for use, and training. It is hard to imagine how to juggle in-class and remote learning on an equitable way that is meaningful for students' learning and that occurs on a daily basis, especially for those teachers with secondary students. Is it safe for secondary teachers to be exposed to 120 students a week instead of elementary teachers having 28 or less a week? If a teacher has 15 students in first period on the A day, do those same 15 students stay together for their remaining 3 classes, or do they interchange with their peers throughout the day? Further clarification, do those students go to the same math class, same elective class, etc.? In regards to cleaning, who will be responsible for cleaning classrooms every day and to what extent? The plan also mentions students will use a disinfecting wipe to clean their desk upon entering a class. I think it would make sense to have them clean up before leaving so they are cleaning up their own droplets rather than someone else's, and then allow them to clean their area again upon arrival and wash hands. Some questions about remote instruction in particular. Are Google Meets required or just Google Classroom for remote learners? Are the teachers accountable for attendance of those remote learners? What is required for the teacher when a remote learner does not attend a Google Meet? When you say students will engage in teacher-led lessons and activities and interact with their peers in a virtual classroom, what are the specific requirements for both teacher and students during these times? And when are these expected to happen during the teacher and student workday? Will teachers be provided equipment to video classes, tripod device for videotaping? When will teachers be trained on new technology? I realize you may not have all the answers to all these questions, but I needed to put them out there. Thank you, Angie Daniels. And this is another for 8.2.1 for reopening school. Hi there, I have 3 kids in Fort Bragg Unified School District, 1 at Dana Gray, 3rd grade, and 2 at Redwood, 2nd grade. Questions. If I choose to do off-campus learning primarily, can my children attend on campus sometimes, or do we need to commit to either or? Will Google Classroom be live so the students are getting the same instruction at the same time, whether on and off campus? Can I prioritize my 2 2nd graders be in the same classroom for ease of coordination with off-campus learning? I am very impressed with what the district has put together. If there is a way that we can support you, please let me know. Thank you so much, Cindy Whitlock. And Michelle Anderson, again, 8.2.1. Will there be enough funding to have continuous modified learning online for students during the school year? When can parents be involved in the saying of what decisions the County of Mendocino Education will whether adopt the new guidelines or the classroom or not? And when will there be decisions made to allow parents to work on finding childcare and adjusting work schedule around their kids' school schedule, whether if online or in classroom learning? So thank you very much for those public comment. Again, this is an item coming up on the agenda, and if you have any further questions or comments, you can email the board meeting at fbusd.us, and Anna will let me know when those items come up on the agenda.
And people are also welcome to email me or call the district office, and I'm happy to talk to folks as well.
Okay. And for the public and the board members, if you didn't see that yet, this is a new folder on it, but that's public comment on agenda items. Anna put them in our folder so you can go back and reference any of those. I tried to be a little influx in my voice, but in case I wasn't too engaging, they are there for you to go back. There are lots of good ideas. Thank you to our parents. Okay, So anything come in last minute, Anna? Okay. All right. So we will move on to reports, and 8.1 is our board reports. I don't know who wants to jump on first. I'm sure it's very similar things since we attended some events last month. Not all go at once.
Okay, I'll start. I just wanted to do a shout out to the retirees. I always, cumulatively, I don't have one of the custodians' years, but we're over 100 years that we're losing. So I always appreciate the duration, the loyalty, and just want to thank them for their service for the district over 100 years. And of course, we spoke briefly last month about the graduation. We attended all the graduations. There was a virtual graduation, and really a lovely, all of them were great events and safe, and they rolled out really nicely. It was a big event for all to coordinate. But what I really have been spending most of my time doing is staying informed with our local news to reduce my fears or anxieties in trying to support local businesses. But I've been keeping track of the county health officer gives a press release or conference every Friday. And it's been at 2:00, but tomorrow is 9 a.m. And from March, how I feel and from today is hugely different because we're mitigating. We're creating, we have 100 days of data from Fort Bragg, what's keeping our essential workers safe and what's working. And so that's helped me relieve a lot of stress and anxiety, along with keeping track of what the County Board of Supervisors is doing, looking at their COVID tab. I've called the COVID call center a couple of times to ask technical questions, and they were able to answer, and some they weren't. But then those calls get fielded to the health officer. So if you have specific questions about more of the doctor end of what's going on with COVID, there's the warm line for a compassionate ear. And of course, there's the crisis line for anyone. I also have been checking in with the city of Fort Bragg. They have a COVID link, and they have great press releases weekly, and they're all documented on a link, Miller and Miller. So you have a doctor perspective and the city manager, and they're giving a perspective of what's going on and how it's affecting them. And that's relieving a lot of my stress and worry of the unknown. And that's the worst part, that we're forced togetherness and just not being able to plan your future. And I can't stress enough to watch your local and stay informed locally so that you're able to answer your questions. And if you don't have answers, then you have your outreach for folks. I've also been spending a fair amount of time watching online discussions and educational talks regarding many topics, especially the social justice and equity. And there was one great one sponsored by Congressman Huffman, and California Department of Education had a great, it was a student-led discussion on social justice and equality, and it was done very nicely to see it from the perspective of the children. And there were local districts, further south, but that was very informative. So I can't stress enough just to stay focused on the local and be informed.
Oh, I'll jump in. I've been doing some of those very same things that Diana's been doing, attending those meetings. And I felt like Dr. Doohan has been very forthcoming with information, and it is very reassuring. And also Dr. Miller. I've also been I did a Keenan training. Well, it wasn't a training, but it was a webinar that was really good that, and there's a recording available. So I don't know if we can put it up on the website or something, called Managing Summer During COVID-19 Restrictions. And it was really well done, and it gave a lot of really good information. And another one that I watched that I was really struck by on social equity and on Panorama is a educational group that puts on a lot of webinars and discussions and whatnot. And this one on unconscious bias in the schools was really great with Dr. Tracy Benson. So if you ever want to Google him, he has apparently a wonderful book out that I have not yet bought. But I don't know if we could put those two up or others on the website, but they were really excellent for anybody interested.
I watched half of that as well. That was very good. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who's next?
Anyone else?
Well, like, this is okay, so I guess I'll just say thank you to everyone for all the extra effort and work they put in to trying to normalize the end of the year in some way and making it extra special in other ways. And I know it's been really stressful for everybody, parents, kids, staff, and it's nice to see our community continue to work together to get through this. And I'm glad to hear all the public comment we received tonight, because it's normally we don't really get any, and encourage those who are watching in the future that, you know, we're listening. So if you have something you want to say, please share it. But thanks everyone, and I hope everyone is able to relax a little bit in their own way for the summer.
So I'll just add a thank you to everybody. I like what everybody said, and I really want to give a big shout out to our superintendent for keeping this whole thing together for us, because it's got to be very difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Absolutely.
I will keep with that theme. And I just wanted to say how nice, and I mean, it is fun because we don't get to go on campus, but just to come through, and the boys and I pick up the lunch on Tuesdays, and it's they like the school food, and so they like all those little bars and things. So it's something different in our house, and just to see the smiling faces at the schools. I mean, we've gone to both Redwood and Dana Gray, and the staff at both schools. It's changed since the school got out, but I mean, it's just nice to have that warm, fuzzy feeling of the schools. So just shout out to Pilar and all of her staff, and then of course that goes up to the district office, because without their support, the employees that are still on the ground in the summer would not be doing the great things. So thank you for all of their work too.
Can I add one thing, Kathy? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I forgot to, and agreed, of course, with all the thank yous. And the food has been amazing. And it's so fun to go up there and say hi and everything. I meant to add that Marshall Carr, one of our teachers, was part of Jared Huffman's conversation on racism and equity and bias. And that is, you can find that to watch still. There's recordings. So just want to give a shout out to Marshall for participating in that.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to the superintendent report.
So the reopening plan, let me just say 10 times that this is a draft, and also that the likelihood of this changing in some way, shape, or form is pretty high. The hard part is we have to start somewhere, and then we need to be able to have the discussion. I would recommend moving forward to the board that, number one, I think we need to have a special meeting in July because we have no July meeting scheduled. I'd like to recommend that all of you, that we come up with a date at the end of this meeting about when we are going to have a special meeting in July. I'd like it at the end of the month. And the reason for that is at that point will be 2 weeks from opening school, and maybe 3 weeks from opening school. And at that point, I would like you to take action on what we are going to do. And then moving forward in perpetuity until we get back to normal, I would like to propose that we place on action the COVID school plans, so that every month we bring attention to what we're doing with kids. You have the opportunity to say, okay, we're going back full time. You have the opportunity to say, nope, this plan stinks, let's modify it. That we have the opportunity to keep us accountable for what's going on. So the questions of, is this just how it's going to be and we're not going to have an opportunity to get back, is completely eradicated. And then also, if that monthly regular meeting is too long, the good news is we can call a special board meeting and we only need 24 hours to post an agenda. So if sometime between the regular board meeting in August and the regular board meeting in September, things change drastically, and we want to come together to say, okay, we're going back, then we can call a special meeting to do that. If we keep this on the action item agenda until we go back full time, it will give our community the ability to voice concerns. It'll give you the ability to talk about it, because if it's not on the agenda, you can't talk about it. And it just keeps a very transparent landscape for all of us. So those are my 2 comments, or more than 2, as I touch my face, my apologies. My comments about just in moving forward with the plan. So right now, what you have in the board packet is truly a draft. We had to start somewhere. And just to let you know, as board members, every single person who made a public comment today, I did my best to reach out and call them. I spoke with everyone except 2, and 1 person I have scheduled to call tomorrow, and another person I've left 2 messages. So I'm hoping that I can connect with them as well. If people have questions about this, they're more than welcome to call. Please let me start out by saying that I stand with the community, with the greater community, that I would like to see our kids back full-time as well. The difficulty with this reopening plan is that we have 2 major barriers. Barrier number 1 is real estate. If we are to maintain 6 feet of social distancing, that means that our desks have to be 6 feet apart. The average classroom in our school district is about 900 square feet. Some are bigger, some are a little bit smaller, but 900 is a safe average. If you do math on that, and you're talking about a 6 foot by 6 foot square, okay, that's 36 square feet. You have to remove all the furniture and all the extra things in the classroom, and just take a look into our classroom. There's a lot of little extra things. But with that kind of social distancing, we can fit about 15 people in each classroom, and that's pushing it. So that's the first major barrier, is the real estate. Can we keep people 6 feet apart? The second barrier is staffing. We simply do not have the staffing to take 1,800 kids and say divide by 11. And someone's going to say, wait a minute, it's divide by 12. If you have a teacher and you're trying to keep a stable group of 12, the teacher has to be one of those 12. So if you take 1,800 and divide it by 11, that takes our staffing needs to well over 150 teachers. That becomes incredibly difficult when we have a total, I believe, of like 112 teachers. So we simply don't have the staffing to pull this off. Now, where does this leave us? This leaves us with trying to find a creative way to maintain the public health order at the state level and at the county level. And how do we do that? And the answer to this is, we don't know. Because number 1, we've never done this before. We are getting a whole bunch of guidelines thrown at us, and then the debates begin. Well, they're guidelines, they're not laws. They're guidelines, they're not mandates. Here's the difficulty. We are the recipient of public funds. And being the recipient of public funds, we have to do our due diligence to absolutely adhere to all the public mandates and suggestions. And if we throw caution to the wind and say, the heck with it, we're going to do whatever we want, then we open up our district to a level of exposure that I am not willing to approve. And when I say exposure, I mean legal exposure. And someone will come up and say, well, Becky, you can't worry about lawsuits. And unfortunately, the reality is we have to. We don't have the funding right now for many things. So I'm putting that out there because those are the barriers. The barriers really are real estate and staffing. So how do we bring kids back so that we can keep them 6 feet apart? We can maintain social distancing. The health guidelines have always said that stable group of 12 is really about not masking. So if you're going to maintain a true stable group of 12, then the idea is that you don't have to maintain social distancing of 6 feet and you don't have to mask. I am telling you, there is no way we can maintain a stable group of 12. And the reason for that is if we have a teacher and 11 students, the minute the principal walks in for an observation, that stable group of 12 has been violated. If an aide walks in, that stable group of 12 is violated. If the counselor walks in, the stable group of 12 is violated. If the teacher then talks to another teacher and goes into another classroom, that stable group of 12 is violated. So the hard part is we know as a school system, we are not going to be able to maintain stable groups of 12. We know this. which is why in this proposed plan, we talk about full-time masking. Our health and the health order right now talks about full-time masking. It's now a state order, but it does have the caveat unless you have some kind of medical condition or underlying condition. The hard part is that we do have severely handicapped students who will not tolerate any kind of masking. So it'd be incumbent upon us to make sure that their teachers and the aides working with them are equipped with the appropriate PPE to maintain their safety as well. So when you look at the reopening plan right now, again, does this have a potential to change? Heck yes. So please hear that. Are you approving this plan today? No. This is about bringing it forward to have a discussion, to start thinking about it, so that as the conditions change between now and July, that we will have the ability to start somewhere. So the idea behind this, when we started this conversation back in April, was what are the main considerations that we have to have? Number one, we have to be ready to close school at a moment's notice. And we have to be able to do that and know that our students and our parents know what to do. Whether it's PSPS or a COVID outbreak in Fort Bragg Unified somewhere, whether it's a student, a staff member, we are going to have to shut down in some way or fashion for a period of time. Is that 14 days? Is that 48 hours? That's another discussion that we're going to have later in the evening. So that was the idea behind this, that if we took this from the mindset that we are 100% remote, then whenever possible, we can bring kids onto campus. That's where this came from. Now, there will be different considerations site by site, because Redwood, as a TK preschool to grade 2 school, that is a different can of worms than a 9-12 comprehensive high school. What we can do at the middle school will be different from Redwood. What we can do at Dana Gray will be different from Redwood. What we do at Dana Gray or middle school will be different. So we're going to need to have the campuses come back together and have the teachers really talk about what remote learning will look like. But this plan started with this conception of we are going to be on remote learning full time. And anytime we can bring kids back to campus, here's what we're going to do. So that's where it started. Again, will this shift? Yes. So for right now, what we're talking about is about taking the existing students, everyone, all 1,800, and assigning them an A or a B day. That in and of itself is going to be a monumental task, because we've already heard from our parent comments. People are going to want to be with their friends. We have another issue, and that's transportation. We're going to have to, if people are going to ride the bus, they are probably going to be assigned a date based on availability, but we'll get to that in just a minute too. So the idea is that we take every student in Fort Bragg Unified, you go on an A or a B day. If you're an A student, then when you and your family are well, and when you and your family are able, and when we as a school district are able, we say all A students come to school. A students come to school on Monday and Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we disinfect and clean in between groups, and then all the B students come on Thursday and Friday. The reason why the school day is down to 1 o'clock is because we are presuming that we will not be able to have recess, because those are common touch points on the playground. The monkey bars are common touch points. The swings are common touch points. The slides are common touch points. And if we're going to do that, we have to disinfect between groups. Well, it's not reasonable to believe that our custodians are going to be able to go out there with bleach sprayers in between groups and then allow that bleach to dry. That's just not reasonable. So if we eliminate recess, and then at the high school and middle school level, we have a huge question mark about athletics right now. CIF is supposed to give us a verdict on high school athletics on July 20th. We are all assuming, not knowing at this point, but we're assuming that football, soccer, volleyball are probably going to be placed on hold, that they might be able to practice this year, but that practice will be really restricted. Cross country has a chance. Cross country has a chance of happening. But again, what does that look like? How do you have the athletes run 6 feet apart? I don't know. It's a race at some point, right? They have to cross each other. But cross country has the highest probability of having the best shot for the fall season. So I say that because if we've taken away recess and we've taken away athletics, And we've taken away the common areas, meaning we've taken away the lunchroom, we've taken away the quad, we've taken away all these congregate areas where kids would be. How do we possibly say, hey, kids, come to school from 8 to 3? I think if we do that, we've essentially turned our classrooms into many isolation rooms. And I don't see really good feelings happening from that. So the idea behind it was to get kids coming to school. In this plan, we talk about doing temperature checks, temperature screens before kids enter the classroom. I will tell you, after listening to Dr. Duhan on her weekly address, we are going to be removing that requirement for temperature checks. She said on minute 49 and 20 seconds, 49 minutes and 20 seconds, if you want to look and just fast forward to it, she talked about how a fever presents itself far into later into the phases of COVID. So you've already been infectious at that point. So a fever doesn't really tell us much, except that you're infected still now. So what I would like to do is remove the temperature checking from this plan so that we save our resources. So moving on, kids come to school, they go to their first period. We still have wireless and touchless thermometers in every classroom. The kids, at least in grades 6 through 12, come in and can grab a wipe and sanitize their seat and desk area. They sit down, we begin the day. That's an A day. We are going to have to talk with our teachers and our departments to discuss what the B kids do on that day. Can the B kids log in on that day and listen to the instruction, and teachers take attendance, and they're looking to see who's on for their first period class? You go to first period just like you would normally, except you're going to be attending virtually. Those are details that we need our teachers in the grade level and departments to figure out what would be most manageable. Or would it be most manageable after 1 o'clock when the A kids go home for them to check in with their B kids? So we haven't teased out all the details yet, because this really needs to be a partnership with our labor unions to figure out what is best. But for right now, we have a starting point. So students come in, they're at school. We have, they've wiped down their desk. They're ready to begin school. Breakfast will be delivered to the classrooms in one of two ways. Either one kid goes off to the cafeteria where all of the carts are laid out by classroom. They take the cart back to the classroom. Everybody eats breakfast. The food then that's been distributed is distributed. It doesn't come back into the box. After they eat breakfast, they do their class. And they are in the classroom, if they're Redwood or Dana Gray, till the end of the day. That end of the day could be 12:30, 1 o'clock. And then at the end of the day, we have different exits where they get a bagged lunch, either for the week or for the day, and then they go home. At the middle school and high school, kind of the same thing, with the exception that kids would be traveling from class to class. One of the questions in the public comment was, will the kids be with the same teacher? The difficulty is, in a middle school and high school setting, those are departmentalized credentials. So the Spanish teacher doesn't have the credential to teach algebra. Okay, the algebra teacher doesn't have the credential to teach social studies, Spanish, so forth. So in that setting, what made sense to us is that those kids would move class period to class period. Because think about it, if we said, okay, we're going to keep kids with their stable group, you're all going to go and do your first period class with that credentialed teacher, and then you're going to open up a Chromebook for the rest of the day and meet with your teachers virtually online. Well, if we're keeping kids, especially at that age, in a classroom all day, and they're still doing online instruction minus one period, what's the incentive to stay in class? So that was the other hiccup. And our teachers, we have more responses that they really need to see their kids. So if I am a high school or middle school student who is moving from class to class, at the end of the period, I go to the next class. When I walk in, I grab a wipe. I wipe down my desk. I wipe down my chair. I wipe down things that I touch. I throw the wipe away. I go to the hand sanitizer, sanitize my hands, I sit down, I'm ready to go. There's a discussion right now that the kids should sanitize and wipe down their desks at the end of the period and let the new kids walking in wipe down their own desks too. That was one of the comments that Angie Daniels had made in her public comments, so that people are wiping up their own droplets, and then the person coming in would wipe down again to make sure that it was done efficiently. So we can talk about all that and get wipes to do that. So kids at the high school level would go from class to class, from teacher to teacher. They would intermingle. But the caveat there is that everyone is masked. So when we talk about social groups and when we talk about safety, Dr. Doohan has said on multiple occasions that masking protects each other. The masking doesn't protect me from breathing in ugly stuff, but the masking protects my droplets from going out into the air. So if we maintain that everyone is masked in the classroom and we keep people 6 feet apart, then the risk of infection is pretty low, because we're all masked, even though we are in an enclosed area, and we are 6 feet apart. Those two things combined reduce the level of exposure. The hard part is when you have a mask on and you're in the classroom, and I watch this at Harvest and Safeway. People have their masks on, their nose itches. Okay, some people itch over it, but some people pull down their mask and itch their nose. And how many of us have seen people walking around town with their masks just on their mouth? Okay, your mask on your mouth prevents your droplets from your mouth, but you still sneeze. So there's lots of things going on with this. We would need to say, hey guys, everybody keep your mask over your nose and your mouth as much as possible. And if you have an underlying health condition that doesn't allow you to stay masked, then we need to try and place you in a part of the room that is a little bit more away. Like, we don't want to put someone without a mask right in the middle. Does that make sense? We may have to shuffle some seating around. What makes me incredibly nervous about this is I don't like how this puts us in a position where we have to target children. And that's what makes me nervous right now. I know that there are some kids who cannot wear a mask, my son being one of them. He's severely handicapped. I can't even put a hat on him. So we have to look at these things on a case-by-case basis. We have to look at these things on how we can address the bigger picture. And the hard part for our district is we have to make a decision on how we can benefit most, because we're never going to please all. And then the hard part is that the people who don't fall into the most category, how can we make it work for them the best that we can? So the idea right now with this reopening plan is really a draft. If we don't have any COVID cases in our district and we can bring kids back, and the public health order says that we're still at this stage where we can intermingle, then the idea is that we keep people masked. In our K-5 classrooms, we keep them in ratios of 12 to 14, depending on the grade level. In our 6-12 classrooms, those ratios could be up as high as 15. And we do our best. People are going to say, well, what's the cleaning process, Becky? We've purchased electrostatic sprayers to disinfect the classrooms. And the idea behind an electrostatic sprayer is that it electrically charges the disinfectant, so that when you spray it, and Barry, feel free to come on and correct me because I may not have this totally. When you spray it in the room, because it's electrostatically charged, it adheres to surfaces. Like, it goes out and looks for surfaces to cling to. And so that will be able to quickly and efficiently sanitize our surfaces. So that would happen at the end of every school day, so that when you come in the next day, you know that if there was COVID in the room and we didn't know there was COVID in the room, it's been zapped. Barry and Wendy, did I explain that the right way?
Hit the nail on the head.
Okay, yay. So that's the level of cleaning that we've purchased. And I've said this at other meetings. We've purchased 400 face shields. We've purchased 2,500 gaiters. We have masks coming in from the county for us. We have gloves, hand sanitizer. So we won't know what we're missing until we rock and roll, and then we figure out, holy moly, we've missed that. So that's the cleaning regimen we plan to be on. In this particular board document, you see a protocol of when we shut down school. That was completely stolen from Marin County. Okay, and that's why we included the Marin County one. We are not taking credit for any of this, but what I loved about that document was that it really clearly showed, here are the 4 different scenarios and here's how we're going to respond. I think when we come back in July at some point, that we put that protocol specifically on as an action item. I'd like you to think about it right now, but we need to talk about that with intense specificity, because I'm concerned with timing. So let's pretend a little kid, or any kid, anybody, employee, we come to school. Parents don't necessarily send their kids to school when they have a fever, but you can talk to all of our health aides that sometime during the day, a kiddo comes in, doesn't feel good. Well, now they have a fever. So what happens when a kiddo has a fever? And that's why that protocol list is super important. My concern is that if a kid has a fever and has other symptoms that are related to COVID, how quickly can we get a test back to us? Now, we can't require a parent to go and test their kid, but we can say, hey, could you go get tested so we know that if we're exposed? So the mom and dad or the parents say, no problem, we're going to take them. So they take them to get tested. Right now, the experience that we've had is it takes 48 to 96 hours to get a test back. Now, I think we have better services in Ukiah where we may be able to get it back in 24 hours. We haven't witnessed that yet. But school has not been in session yet. So let's say 24 hours later, school is in session on an A day. The kid left on Monday A day. We bring back school on Tuesday A day. And now we get word that that kiddo had COVID. So do we shut down for 14 days, just that classroom? That's what Marin County is doing. They're shutting down just that classroom. Everybody else gets to come to school. Now, the hard part is Marin County is not as closely connected as Fort Bragg Unified. If you are living in Fort Bragg Unified and you have 3 kids, they all go to Fort Bragg Unified schools. Okay? So, and while we can segregate our schools by age, the reality is that all of us have some kind of a connection to someone else. And it doesn't take long in Fort Bragg to connect the dots about how you know someone over here and how it links back to you that you've touched that person in some way. So my concern is, because we are so small and because we are so intimate, when we have a positive case, should we shut down the entire district for 14 days and allow the blossoming to happen? Because what we're seeing in Ukiah from the graduation parties is that 2 weeks after the graduation parties, we have 60 people in isolation and the cases are starting to bloom and blossom. So those are things that I think we need to have an absolute, very intense conversation about in July. I'd like you to think about it because I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I have to tell you, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with saying we're just going to shut down a classroom. And the reason for that is because we are so interconnected and so intermingled. And I don't know how to eliminate that interconnectedness and that intermingledness in our school district. So that's one thing that I think we need to talk about. The reason I think it's super important for us to keep this on the front burner of action is because this situation is evolving. Where we are right now compared to where we were in March is astronomically different. It's astronomically different than where we were in April and where we were in May. If any of you were out in Fort Bragg on the weekend, you would not have known that it wasn't anything but a normal June day on the coast with tourists. I mean, it was crazy. How many vehicles had the little pink stickers from McCarricker? It was very easy to watch. So what does that mean for us? That means for us that we need to be prepared to close at a moment's notice. We need to train our parents and our students on what remote learning is, because if COVID doesn't shut us down, anybody want to bet that PSPS is going to shut us down? We were out for 4 days last year. Now, if we don't have power, Google Classroom is going to be a little tough to stomach. But it doesn't mean that we can't have our kids do things in other ways. So our reopening plan is exactly that. It's a plan and it's a draft. Will it change? If I were to bet, I would say yes. So go ahead and throw your questions at me.
I mean, I have just a lot of comments because I have been watching Moran and Novato, and they are planning the 5-day, and their language. I know the CDE recommendations. It's tough because it's a document for LA Unified and Potter Valley. I mean, they're clearly different square footage and demographics and all kinds of things. But their language is 4 to 6 feet if practicable. And they feel like that language is safe. And that, like you, maybe it's a health officer question to know if a child in one room comes down positive, that we'd have an internal contact tracing where we'd find out how many other kids in other classes were exposed. And if whatever that magic number is, if it's 10 or 20, then you close down the whole school. But if it's less than this number, you would maybe, only be able to close that one classroom. So I think it's moral turpitude to our community that our community has been keeping us safe. So it's the same community that's our school community. And you just have to make sure that kids aren't being sent home or sent to school sick, and that you're not doing the risky activities, as the health officer says, is singing and playing music with a group, and being in large groups unmasked. And I think that was most of the requirements are to keep 6 feet away unmasked. So if you're 6 feet away and masked, that's very, very safe. So, the 4 to 6 is practicable because they'll be masked.
And so that's the thing that we need to have a discussion about, which is why the July meeting is going to be hugely important. If we say we're going to go down to 4 feet of social distancing, that changes the playing field. Now, we can say that as a board and as an administrative team. We also have to allow our teachers to weigh in on this because this is a change in working condition, and we need to have our staff feeling safe. And that's another concern I have. Our staff has to feel safe. Is 4 feet feeling safe? It varies from person to person, and it varies from what people are coming to the table with in their own health. And there's a real fear right now, and that fear is fostered because people don't want to die. And so, if I told you, hey guys, you might get the flu, but I can guarantee you're not going to die, all of you would say, well, okay, let's just get the flu. Let's get the flu. Let's puke it out and go home. It's kind of like chickenpox, right? I mean, we're all old enough that I remember chickenpox parties.
Yes.
We've got a chickenpox. Everybody brought your kid in to get the chickenpox, because we didn't have a vaccine back then, which ages me completely. However, there was never really a fear of dying from chickenpox. So you just brought your kids in, you got them and got it over with. The hard part with this is that this is an evolving virus. It presents itself differently from person to person. The good news is that the statistics are pretty good. 80% need no hospitalization, recover just fine. Then you've got that portion of the population, which is less than 20%, that may need hospitalization, and then even smaller. I think it's less than 1% where it's death. But the hard part is that because it is so contagious, people are fearful. So I want to be able for us to come up with a plan where our employee groups feel safe, where our families feel safe, and that we can pull it off, that we aren't looking to our schools and our teams and having an impossible ask. So I put that out there because if we're going to say and follow Novato and Marin that 4 feet is fine, then that's a conversation that we need to start having very quickly. But that's why they can go back 5 days a week.
Right. And right, because they have more space. But and really, I mean, I know the plan is a draft, but putting in that we'll reevaluate often and adjust, as safe. And that the goal is to go 5 days a week, even if it is just half days, because there needs to be, I don't know if you can the budget's the other part of it. I mean, we can't just hire, extra night shift custodians because the money's not there. But, if the money changes and that's available, because, then there's just so many, we aren't doctors and it's debatable. I mean, I listened to the Marin County health officer. He says that on metal, the virus can stay on for 7 hours. That's it. So the next day it's gone. I mean, but that might not be what the next health officer says, but everything else from metal down is less hours. So we're mitigating all of these things to make it even safer, even if, but that's the problem. We aren't the health officers.
So right now, we're making the best plans we can with the information that we have. And remember, when COVID first came on the scene, we were told that it could potentially live on surfaces for up to 9 days. Anybody remember that? Mm-hmm. So it's constantly changing. And the hard part is we're all making the best guesses that we can. I want to talk about transportation because originally at the July meeting, we talked about transportation completely coming off the table and only doing transportation for our special ed mandated population. Now, we have looked at the CDC guidelines, which is the Center for Disease Control, and they distributed a bus kind of map, I guess, what would you call it? A seating arrangement. And thank you, Barry, for joining us. A seating arrangement for the CDC for buses that shows how we can put 28 kids on a bus. But putting 28 kids on a bus was 100% based on every single kiddo being masked. So one of the things that we're going to have to talk about is, okay, we can bring busing back. We can do A/B days, and if we split the kids up on A and B days, then we can actually get our kids to school, but we would have to eliminate in-town transportation still. So. But it would also require every kiddo on the bus to wear a mask. And if you can't wear a mask, we'd have to give you a face shield. I mean, but there's no way that we can put a kid unmasked on a bus of 28 the way this seating configuration is. Because I think that, I know that would violate the interpretation of this. That large number of 28 was 100% reliant on everybody being masked. So with that information, we felt comfortable with saying, okay, we can open up transportation for bridge to bridge, meaning if you live south of Noyo Bridge and you live north of Pudding Creek Bridge, we might be able to pull this off. But it also means you may not be able to pick your day. So you're not going to be able to say, well, we want to be on A days because, our best friend over here is on A days. The issue was going to be, if you live in this area, this is when the bus goes to this area. Or you don't have to ride the bus. Barry, did I encapsulate that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. So what other questions do you have?
Do we have the survey results back from, or that's too soon? You gave
from the staff or from the parents?
For the busing. How many folks need busing?
That's still happening.
Okay.
And there's lots of people who are filling out the survey who live in town. And if you live in town, you don't qualify for busing. So if you live anywhere between Pudding Creek Bridge and Noyo Bridge, we're not going to be providing in-town transportation. So our apologies on that.
So I had that question about if families are responding to that. And then my other question is, I have a hard enough time buying cleaner for my business. Barry, how long do we have wipes for? How long do we have masks for? I don't see how schools can open everywhere. I mean, it's not just us, but who's making all those items for this many kids and how disposable it's going to have to be?
It's, Kathy, I can tell you it's actually pretty amazing how many emails I get daily from vendors that have hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, wipes. It's unbelievable. We're going to be in good shape because we have good suppliers. Our custodial supply company, we put on our order like we were going back to school normal. We've also incorporated with our paper company today. I got a quote for, I don't know, 100 cases of alcohol-based wipes, 100 cases of alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Every classroom right now, with the exception of the high school, has either a soap dispenser or hand sanitizer. So, and we have a lot of that stuff on the shelf still because we stock up on it every year. So, but because of what's going on right now, there's so many different companies that are able to provide this stuff. Where they're getting it from, I don't know. But I mean, honest to gosh, I get 20 emails a day. Hey, we want to sell you this in a 55-gallon drum. So there's no shortage of cleaning supplies. The other thing is that the vendors that we get our normal cleaning supplies from, either Hilliard or Spartan, all the regular cleaning chemicals that we use daily are EPA certified to kill COVID-19. They always have been. So based on what we're using right now, the electrostatic sprayers, that's going above and beyond. We don't have to do that. However, if it's going to make people more comfortable, we're going to do it. Providing extra hand sanitizer and the disinfecting wipes. We're going to provide that because, we're doing our due diligence. But, like I said, we're in good shape. We could not get our custodial order this year and we'd still be good for this year. We're kind of hoarders, which is not a bad thing.
And that includes masks and the face shields too?
We haven't had actually we have had the masks in the past. I think most of the masks that we have were left over from H1N1 in 2009. But we're still able to get a lot of that stuff as well. The company.
So, and Barry, didn't you place the order for masks and face shields 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago?
Oh yeah, and we actually got the masks like a week later. The face shields haven't showed up yet, but they will. I think we ordered 400 of those and 2,500 of the, net gaiters. So yeah, I have a little COVID pile in the office next door of supplies.
So we started ordering a while back, and we weren't going to wait for someone to do it for us. So it's coming in, and we're getting ready for it. But again, we haven't done this before. So we are making our best guesses. And what I anticipate is right before we start school, someone's going to say, hey, what about this? And we'll be like, oh, good idea. But that's why we need to keep talking about it to make sure that we are addressing all these little things, because the little things could turn into big things. So the wipes, originally we had said, okay, the kids will wipe their desk, with the suggestion coming in that the kids wipe on their way out and wipe on their way in. We just need to be ready for that, because what that does, it doubles the order of wipes. Make sense? If we anticipate that a teacher is in the middle school or high school is going to use 3 containers of wipes a week, well, if we have, let's just do some simple math. If we have 50 teachers and they're using 3 containers of wipes a week, that's 150 wipes containers a week, and there are 36 weeks in the school year. Well, 150 times 36 is over 4,000. So almost 5,000. So that's just the middle school and high school. So that's how many containers of wipes we're going to go through if we maintain that protocol. We haven't talked about Redwood and Dana Gray yet, because they use wipes every day when they do breakfast in the classroom. They eat and then they wipe off their area. So those kinds of things will be issues that we are going to have to do some math and figure out that we're ordering appropriately, and then watch monthly how we are using these supplies so that we can order in advance early enough so that they come. There are lots of things that are wild cards on this. The face shields, we only ordered 400. Because originally when we placed the order, we said, okay, we're going to order 400 because really it's the severely handicapped classrooms that need them the most. But in talking with more staff members, they said, Becky, how am I supposed to teach and talk with a mask over my face? Good point. So maybe all of our teachers need a face shield. Well, we have 300 employees. So if all 300 employees need a face shield, that supply of 400 doesn't look very good now, does it? So those are the things that are kind of tricky. We know we need to look at this, but this is why this has to be on the board agenda in an ongoing way. I think the idea of having the board chats so that parents can have a place to come in and have this discussion with us and with 2 people from the board listening, I think that's a great idea. Again, I just want to reiterate to every parent, family watching, we want to bring the kids back 5 days a week. We have 2 main barriers right now. Number 1 is staffing, and number 2 is real estate. We don't have the classroom space. We don't have the space to keep people 6 feet apart. If we as a community, and I want to say really a community instead of a board, if we as a community all say we're good with 4 feet, that changes the game. But the people who really have to agree to that is our staff has to feel safe. Our staff has to feel safe. And we have to ensure that our staff is safe, because we know that the kiddos recover and bounce back. But what about those of us who are older? What about those of us who have heart conditions? What about those of us who have diabetes, right? So that's the other part of this. But those are the things that we have to talk about moving forward. Again, we've never done this before. So we're doing the best we can with the information we have, and we have to have the discussion so that we can kind of tease out what's going to work and what's not going to work. The 2 main barriers, I will say again, are that we don't have the classroom space, we don't have the staffing to pull off an 11-to-1 ratio of students. Questions?
So staff was surveyed, just general questions about their needs and what for distant learning, and also just safety protocol. And so those will compile, and the ADCO will discuss those at the site level. And then families were able to decide on the style of learning they'd like during this COVID.
I suspect we are going to have to do another survey as we get closer to the start of school. I suspect that we are going to need to put out some kind of a document where parents commit, and then we decide how you break that commitment. I fully recognize, we all fully recognize that this has to be a fluid situation. We can't hold families' feet to the fire that if you choose to do remote learning all year and we say, no, you can't come back. I don't think that's fair. I also know that our families need to have that flexibility. If I'm sending my son to school and he's going to the high school and my husband comes down with COVID, I can't really send my son to school. And I need to be able to call the teacher and say, you know what, we're keeping him home. We're going to self-isolate for 2 weeks. We're going to do distance learning for 2 weeks because we have a fever in the family and we don't have a test result back yet. And this also really, we are asking our community to be honest with us. That's the other thing that we're asking. Because if families keep their kids at home, but their kids have been doing sleepovers and picnicking and hanging out in the park with their friends, and we don't know that someone has tested positive, or we don't know that someone has a fever, because that's the other consideration. Just because my kid has a fever, I may say I'm not going to test, and I just keep my kid at home. But that's really irresponsible of me, because my kid could have exposed so many other people. Make sense? So I say that because we're really going to be asking our community, who is coming into school as many days as we allow, to please keep everybody safe, which means it's okay if you have a fever. We don't want to shame you. We don't want to shun you, but go get tested so that if we need to do a serious clean, or we have to start contacting people to say, hey, we got a fever in room 34, help us communicate that so that people who may have been infected don't become carriers and get it out of control. So in moving forward, where I think we need to go with this is truly, we need to come up with the July meeting. We need to keep having the conversations of what this looks like. We need to closely monitor the health orders. And then we need to have a very, very real discussion with, if we want to go to 5 days a week, what does that mean for us as a staff? And what does that mean to us as a community of learners? If we go 5 days a week, we really only have two options. Option one is we relax the social distancing and we do like Marin Novato is doing, and we say, we'll go to 4 feet. And if the one third of our families who are committing to remote really commit to remote, we can pull off 5 days a week, 4 feet of social distancing. We could put 20 kids in the class. That we can do. Okay. But everybody's got to feel good about it. And if we have staff members who say, Becky, you're nuts. Why are you putting me at risk? The health order says 6 feet. And I can't blame them if folks say that. But that's one of the difficulties. So that's one thing. And then we have to monitor the health orders to see what happens with COVID in the summer, because people are coming to Fort Bragg, folks. People are on the coast, and they are not from here. They are not from here. So what's coming into our community right now, no one knows. And our community is going out. We have people going to Oregon and going to Nevada and visiting family and, getting on a plane and checking out other states and other places. So we're not sheltering in place. So I think we need to monitor this. The conversation has officially begun. We've got lots of opinions, which is fantastic. But we're going to have to take this a little bit. We're going to have to take a deeper dive into this. For right now, I'm going to be working with the employee groups to kind of get their take on what's going on and to see how they feel about relaxing any social distancing. I have to tell you that if I am a teacher in the classroom, I don't know if people are going to feel good about relaxing it to 4 feet.
Right. And I want to thank you, Becky, and all the staff, because this isn't just something that you thought about before the agenda. I mean, this is something that you've been checking in with OES meetings with the county health officer, and it's something that has to be blessed by all the above. So I thank you for your time and effort, and you don't even look ragged. I just can't believe how your stamina is amazing and leading us through this. And like you said, it's the beginning of, it's going to be evolving, and to make everyone comfortable and understand, how their day is going to roll. And if we have to start out, baby steps and then have it evolve until everyone's protocols are in place, that might be the way it is.
And I think the hard part is, I will tell you as a teacher and as a person in education, planning is what we do. Okay. I know what I'm doing 6 months out. And the hard part is we are not able to do that right now. It has been incredibly difficult for folks. Planning is what we do, and yet we can't plan appropriately. And that makes it hard. So, I want to tell every parent out there, hey, I get it with the childcare because I can't leave my kid home alone and I'm coming into work. So I've been paying for childcare since March 17th. I get it. It's not easy. And finding childcare and then making sure that childcare feels okay with me crossing into school and then coming back in. And the hard part is that as parents with children, if you have a house payment, you got to work. And so how do you do that if all of a sudden the shelter in place orders are being relaxed so you can go back to work, so you're going back to work? Well, what do you do with your children? I 100% agree with the public comments. I'm not leaving my kid home alone to just sit and scan YouTube all day and play video games. So that's a real concern. One of the things that we talked about in this plan was if we have students with connectivity issue, how can we provide help to where kids can come in and maybe be supervised in the library to kind of use our Wi-Fi and internet. There may be some flexibility with using our after-school grant money to provide childcare on A days for B students and B days for A students. But here's the tricky part. Who gets it? Because if we're providing childcare for everybody, we might as well go back 5 days a week. And then it goes back to the same thing that I said at the beginning. We don't have the real estate. We do not have the classrooms to have this many childcare classrooms to keep kids 12 to 1. And now we have a whole nother layer of student exposure. So there's a lot of tricky parts in this. Yes, we can help provide some childcare, but where do we put them? Where do we put the childcare? I don't know. That these are all the conundrums we have. We have these great ideas. Okay, we'll provide childcare for parents on A days for B kids and B days for A kids. We don't have the space. You know, we talked about, okay, well, the high school library is a pretty big space. The PAC is a pretty big space. We could put kids in there. But now we're moving kids and crossing campus to campus. So again, I don't know what the right answer for this is. I know that our moms and dads need to know. I know that our moms and dads are worried about going back to work. How do we juggle all this? The hard part is we've never done this before. The state has not given us more money so that we could hire more people. That's not happening. And we don't have more classrooms. That's the other real pickle. And someone said, oh, Becky, it's okay. Let him sit outside. That would be lovely. I want someone to name a September where it did not rain in Fort Bragg. Anyone?
So Becky, when you want us to meet at the end of July, do you have any set dates with your union groups to reevaluate? Or I'm thinking
No,
we're
but
doing a lot of discussion, but I mean, until we're closer and those groups are on some kind of the same page, we're kind of dancing in circles.
Well, I know FBDTA is working hard on looking at a lot of these things. And I think the plan when we left, and I know Gary is on right now, the plan when we left was for us to revisit this in a few weeks, to give them some time to really look at this and dive deeply into what's possible and what is kind of the threshold of minimums. And Gary, I don't know if you want to add or not. There he is. Hi, Gary. Sorry to call you out.
No, it's good. Yeah, I think we'd said we were going to try to meet in the second half of July, right? Our union team, we're meeting every few days right now. We're meeting early next week again to keep going. We're trying to come up with some thoughts. I mean, I think every time we've had a conversation, we've come up with, for every solution or answer we've come up with, we've found another 8 or 9 questions that need to be addressed. And so we're kind of in the same spot of where we're just trying to work through it as best we can.
I had a conversation today with one of our teachers. It was a great conversation. It lasted, and I called her and said, okay, we're going to be quick. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. An hour and 40 minutes later. But it was a great exchange about, she had questions about this. And I said, hadn't thought about that. And then I would give her what we did think about. And it was this back and forth about, what would work and what isn't going to work. What concerns me right now is we need to be prepared for the first day of school, whether we move that first day of school or not. That's another discussion. Do we want to take the first day of school and move it to the Monday instead of it being the Wednesday? That's a consideration. Then we would need to adjust the calendar. If we're going to adjust the calendar, we should probably do that in July. But because that's a change in working condition, I need CSEA and FBDTA to say, okay. Now, I don't think that's a tough sell. If we come together and say this is the best for the district, I know that both units are going to say, okay. But those are the kinds of discussions that I need to have with our bargaining units before I come to you at the end of July. If I know that I have a meeting with you at the end of July, and if I know that, and we tell the community at the end of July, you are taking action, FBUSD Board of Trustees, and you are taking action on the school reopening plan, then that puts more urgency on what we are going to do to really find as many solutions as possible, and then work with our bargaining teams to say, okay, who are the people at risk who really don't want to, who really can't afford to be in a classroom because of health issues? Then we find where we can place them and put them so that they can be a robust member of the team. So these are all things that we're looking at. I think it's hugely important for us to have a meeting in July so that you are taking action on it, and that puts our feet to the fire to get this done. And then when families come in July to listen to this meeting, we can send out communication to them the day after the meeting to say, here's what we're going to do.
I agree, and I know July 3rd is the end of our or the end of our current SIP order, so it'll be adjusted by then. And then July 15th, California Department of Education said they probably wouldn't do any live until then. But there is the additional provisions that are lurking about instructional time and distant learning kind of mandates, and so that's going to change all of this formula. You know, what the parents want, what the admins want, what the teachers want. So that's going to be another conditions that need to be reassessed with, what can happen. So definitely the end of July makes a lot of sense, and we'll know what the virus is doing as well.
And just to remind families, if you're not in a job where you have contact with 120 people a day, you don't know what that feels like. And this is not 120 contacts. If I'm a secondary teacher, this is not 120 contacts like a store clerk or a grocery store. When you're dealing with the level of people that Harvest and Safeway are dealing with, those are quick 5-minute exposures. They're not an 80-minute class period or a 4-hour school day. That's a much different scenario for folks. Even me in the district office with my faux wood, I have 4 walls. I can keep people out. I can still work with Wendy down the hall, Barry down the hall, all these people, but my door can stay closed and I can self-isolate. That's not the case with the classroom teacher. The classroom teacher is there. They're living it. And even with the mask, they're still breathing it. And I don't believe for one second that if we have a kindergarten in a classroom who trips and hurts themselves, that the teacher is going to say 6 feet. Okay, the teacher is going to do what teachers do. We are social human beings who love our kids. And this is where all the trickiness is going to come in, because this is so unnatural for us as human beings. We were not born into bubbles. We were born into living, breathing air. We talk about as babies how babies need to have that skin-to-skin touch and feel of their mothers to have that part of their brain develop. To have skin-to-skin contact with their family so that part of their brain develops. So we are doing a very unnatural thing right now, which is why so many people are having a hard time with it. Mm-hmm. So bringing our kids back to school is hugely important. So how do we do that and maintain safety? Golden question number 1.
Okay. I just want to let Scott wants to talk, but we've been on this an hour. And we're not making any decisions. I just want to let everybody talk and kind of wrap up and see if we can move on to the next thing.
So thanks, Kathy. Just really quick, I know you guys have probably discussed this, but I just want to bring it up. A solution for one doesn't have to be a solution for all. So older kids deal with distance and safety differently than younger kids. I know you guys have talked about this and know this, but I know that if the unions have to agree as a group, but again, it's just I think it's so important to get these kids back in school. And you did a survey, 2/3 of the families want their kids to go back to school, and I think we need to work to get creative, which I know you're doing, but as we work through this, whether we change the 6 feet to 4 feet and keep teachers 6 feet away, but I don't know, whatever we can do to get these kids back to school, and maybe it's just the older kids, they can go more than the younger kids. I don't know. But just remember, one size doesn't fit all.
And I just have one last statement. I close. You bring up a good issue that would be, I'd like to know from the health officer. I don't know how you equate, but grocery store workers haven't closed. They've been working 100 days. They're still working. They've had the surveillance testing. All have come back negative, although I don't know if every clerk got tested. And they do only meet with people 5 minutes, but they're working an 8-hour shift of many, many, many different households, and they're being safe. And so there's so many models that are in town now that's working. So that'd be a great question for the health officer. How do you equate what we want to do and what they've been doing for 100 days and staying safe?
And we're, running a hotel and a restaurant, we are in a room with 100 people for a couple of, for hours at a time. So there are safety measures that are out there, and I know school is different, kids are different, and all that. But we can look at other industries. Really good point, Diana, of what they're doing to keep themselves safe, and maybe we can use that in schools.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing up the littles as compared to the high school or even middle school. But I know the little ones, not only could they fall and need a hug or whatever, but they hug each other. They're all over each other all the time, and one hurts and they all cover you around. And so I know that's a whole different issue that we have to look at. So thank you.
Anything else on this? Do you want me to move on to the next item, Kathy? Kathy's frozen.
Kathy's frozen.
Okay.
Okay, I'm locked, or
I think she's ready.
so I'm gonna have to. When?
I think she said go ahead.
Gary, thank you for
I think because
for being here.
Yeah.
What?
I'm going to keep this real brief. It's been a fairly long conversation already on this. But before I say anything about the reopening plan, I just want to say on behalf of the FBDTA board, kind of what others have said tonight, big thank you to all the teachers, the aides, the support staff that really put a huge amount of effort in this past few months to try and make sure that the school year ended as successfully as possible. We really hope everybody gets to take a few weeks to refresh, because we know next year is going to be challenging, and we need to come back ready for that. I also want to say, we appreciate the administration's getting out early on this and really trying to tackle these issues now, even though it sometimes feels like it's almost too soon because of the constant changes that are coming. I think the fact that we're asking these questions now, even though there's going to be a lot of revisions and changes, it puts us on a nice solid foundation, right? When those changes come, we've had a lot of time to really think about the implications. So we appreciate that. I think it's helping everybody go into the summer feeling a little less anxious. So that's great. With regards to the reopening plan, broadly speaking, FBDTA supports it. Our primary concerns are the health and safety of the school community, both physical and emotional, and also obviously the academic progress of the students. And with the information we have now at this time, we feel that this is the scenario that offers the best chance of success. That said, we know that it's a constantly changing environment, and we're going to be working all through the summer with Becky and the other administrators to refine and revise and retool it as new information comes out and dictates those changes. But I think that we're in a good place. I think that I think that by August we'll hopefully be ready to welcome the kids back in some form or another. That's all of our goal, I think. And like I said earlier, every one of these conversations, last week I think we met for 6 straight hours on Zoom the one day having these conversations, and it's just question after question after question. But because we're asking these questions now, I think that, we can be confident that we are going to solve the challenges that come up. We're here to say, we support this, but we also support continuing to refine and make changes as necessary. So that's all I'm going to say, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
Kathy, do you want me to move on to 8.2.2?
Well, let's just make sure. I'm sorry I was lost there for a minute, but I think I got enough people off, whatever they're doing. Anybody else have any questions before we move on? Just work. Okay, then please move on, Becky.
Okay, so I emailed all of you a document today, Mr. Triplett, and I'm going to share my screen so that you can see. And if you could, I have 2 screens in my office, so if you could give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Anna, are you good? Can you see this? Okay. So our coaches are ready to come back. Our coaches are saying, hey, you're letting Little League come back. How come we can't come back? Oh, great point. So what we did is we said, look, tell us what you're going to do. Look at the health order. Tell us how you're going to keep folks safe. CIF has a document out that's about 10 pages that they sent to all to our athletic directors or principals. I received a copy. We know that the coaches have access to it as well. And we said, okay, if you want to use facilities to get kids practicing moving, tell us what you're doing. So here's what basketball is coming up with right now. I am not going to say that the temperature screens need to happen because of Dr. Duhan's most recent announcement last week. So what legal has suggested that we do is we look at what everybody is doing, and then we say, does it work with the health order? And we are looking for us, does it work with CIF? And it does. This is a baseball team. I believe they use our fields, and they'll have to get a field use form. But this is what they want to do. And again, it's all in with the health order. But one of the things that our attorney suggested that we do is we do an athletic extracurricular activity COVID-19 assumption of risk, waiver of liability, indemnification agreement. So with this, we don't just pass this out and say, here, sign it. We need to be able to have the CDC guidelines and the current health orders distributed with this. I think to just kind of eliminate some touch points that we can have it online. And then if parents want a printed copy, then we can print and give it to them. It's pretty long, so it's a lot of paper. That's the one thing that worries me. But this is a pretty short indemnification agreement. So, I understand, and it gives the parties the participation in the activity. I knowingly and freely assume all such risks, both known and unknown, and assume full responsibility for my child's participation, which is number 3. And then 4, I willingly agree to comply with the stated customary terms and conditions for participation as they relate to protection against infectious diseases, which is where that CDC document comes in. But it's a 1-page document and a signature. And then we need to get it translated. So that's what we have for participation. Our teams are wanting to get back into the gym. We're making it really clear that you can't share basketballs. Our teams are wanting to get out on the fields and start hitting the baseball around. Okay, but you can't share balls. You need to make sure that you have wipes on hand so that you can wipe things down. The temperature checks, maybe we should do temperature checks for right now because we are bringing kids back together for the first time. I'm fine with having them do temperature checks. You could give me, I wanted to kind of get your pulse on this. How are you feeling about it? Basketball, we're limiting it to about 6 players at a time because Fort Bragg High School gym has 6 hoops. And I don't know if people know that, but there's those side hoops that come down. So that's what we're looking at for that. Tell me your initial thoughts.
Well, in terms of taking the temperature, not that that's an indicator necessarily that it's COVID, but we do have a protocol in place in schools anyway that if a student has a fever that we don't want them to be at school. So I don't think it hurts because there are other diseases we're going to encounter this fall. It's not just COVID-19. We'll still have the flu.
We can have them do temperature checks. That's fine. Any other thoughts?
So is this like club ball where they wouldn't need a physical?
So we're right now the Sticks baseball would have to fill out a field, a facility use agreement for our fields. So they don't get carte blanche to come on because they are not school related.
Right.
The basketball is school related. It's our varsity coaches have asked because they usually do some kind of summer ball. They do like summer clinics or just, it's not practice. It's open gym time. That's what they normally do. And then I know that the other teams are looking at potential conditioning. And so what does that mean for us? We're not opening up the weight room right now because the weight room is common touch points. But doing conditioning out on the fields, running, aerobics, calisthenics, all those things are fine, especially if you can keep social distance. Football's a little strange because they can't use the sled. They can't use the ball because they can't touch. And then soccer, they can do drills, but every kid has to have their own ball. So there are requirements, I should say requirements, there are recommendations from CIF, and we're following those.
Okay.
But I wanted to put this out to you so when you drive by our fields and you see kids out there, you say, what's going on? They are coming to their administrators, the athletic director, to me and saying, okay, we'd like to go out. Here's what we can do. And we've asked the coaches to do that, because if they tell us what they can do and they put it in print, that's a whole lot easier to monitor than us telling them what they need to do. And they don't take ownership of that piece. So I'm happy with letting the coaches get back into the gym and get kids going, especially if it's only 6 at a time. We have enough basketballs to keep that going. And then they follow the guidelines of them wiping down the balls between practices, letting them sit. And there's a 15-minute lag time so that one group can leave and the next group can come in. So questions?
So what is Little League doing?
So Little League gave us a whole list of things that they were going to do, and we approved it. I don't have that at my fingertips right now, but they are keeping it. I can tell you what I remember. And Barry, if you remember, feel free to chime in. I think they're keeping it to 10 or 11 kids and 1 adult. They are hitting the ball, but they're not. I want to say that there's only one person touching the ball. Is that correct, Barry?
Yes, that's correct. They're maintaining a group of 12. It's the same kids all the time. They're only practicing. They're not playing games. They're not scrimmaging. It's just they're running drills. Every kid uses their own bat. They don't share helmets. So I mean, and they actually went the next step further and put signage up at the Little League fields indicating what's permissible and what isn't. So they did a really good job in preparing for this. And I know the president of the Little League board was in communication with the public health officer pretty regularly prior to asking if they could resume practice.
And I think they were not doing dugouts. No dugouts was part of theirs. So will this form be on the normal athletic site that when we need to clear a student for a high school?
So
something more like that's what I was trying to say, club, or it'd be just on the homepage of the district.
We're just using this right now for our kind of summer open gym season.
Okay.
And then when we have an indication from CIF what is going to be permissible for this season, then we'll just contact legal to make sure that this is still something that we're going to be using. Any other questions? Okay. Shall we move on, Madam President?
We shall. So I think we lost our union person, so his statement must have been made.
Yes.
Right? He's gone.
He did say that he was. This was a lengthy conversation, and so that's why he closed up. So
yeah, thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the consent items. So these are traditionally non-controversial and easy to approve. Is there anything that any board member feels needs to be removed or pulled? And pulled? Okay. So can I have an approval to approve the consent calendar, or a motion to approve? Sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Mary. I'll second you.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the warrants and consent items. Yeah.
Okay. And Diana, can you read them for me?
Yes. So it's 9.1 warrants dated June 1st, 2020. 9.2 minutes for the regular board meeting, May 14th, and special board meeting, June 11th. 9.3 is personnel action report. 9.4 is the Agricultural Career Technical Education Incentive Grant 2020-21. And 9.5 is obsolete materials and equipment.
All those in favor?
Yes.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. And I think that clip, whether I have Diana read that before or after, I'm sorry, I don't know which way. I seem to do it different. Bear, are you here for the roof project too, or can we dismiss you?
Well, I'm here if you have any questions about it, but I'm also here for the last agenda item as well. But if you want to dismiss me, you can.
I guess not. We've got a couple things on there. Sorry, Barry.
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we are moving on to the action items. So 10.1 is a resolution. These first three things happen annually. So there are things that Wendy needs to do to close up the book. So I'll let you tell us about them.
Right. Okay. So the first one is budget transfers. This is basically giving me permission to make whatever transfers to the budget are necessary in order to balance the books at the end of the year and to have the budget as close to the estimated actuals in the budget as close to reality as possible.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Wendy? All right. So can I have a motion to approve this resolution?
I move to approve the resolution 2012 for budget transfers.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. I'm trying to quickly pull it. Is this a long one?
No, it's
okay.
not.
All right. So, can you read it for me, Diana?
Sure. Resolution 20-12, authorization for 2019-2020 budget transfers. Whereas the Fort Bragg Unified School District will need to make year-end budget transfers. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Fort Bragg Unified School District authorizes the Chief Business Official or Superintendent to make such transfers as may be needed. Passed and adopted this 25th day of June 2020 by the Board of Trustees of the Fort Bragg Unified School District by the following vote.
Okay. And did I pause long enough for the discussion? Okay. All right, Anna.
Okay, Trustee Schneider. Trustee Schneider.
Yes. Sorry,
It's okay. Trustee Mattson.
Yes.
Trustee Paoli.
Yes.
President Babcock.
Yes.
And Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So 10.2 is resolution 20-13. Same situation. Wendy, any comments?
No, this is just the another year-end thing. As we get ready to close the books, we'll be moving money from the general fund into the cafeteria fund, from the general fund into Fund 17, and this basically gives us permission to do that in order to close the books.
Okay. All right. Can I call for a motion, or does anybody have any questions? All right. Can I call for a motion? Maybe we'll try to be official if we just go like that and then, so nobody's talking over for the motion. Nope. All right. How about Diana and Mary, you second it? There we go. But you need to say it though.
Okay. I move to approve resolution 20-13 interfund transfers.
I'll second.
Okay. And can you read that one, Diana?
Sure. Resolution number 20-13, authorization for 2019-20 interfund transfers, whereas the FBUSD will need to transfer money between funds, whereas the FBUSD has the need to transfer revenues and expenditures between funds. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the FBUSD authorizes the Chief Business Officer or Superintendent to make such transfers as needed. Passed and adopted this 25th day of June 2020 by the Board of Trustees of Fort Bragg Unified School District by the following vote.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Anna.
Okay, President Babcock.
Yes.
Trustee Paoli.
Yes.
Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Trustee Mattson.
Yes.
And Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. 10.3, resolution for interfund temporary cash transfers. Again, similar thing, Wendy?
Right. So this allows us, if, for example, our general fund were a little short on cash and because of receivables or something, and we needed to move money from another fund to cover that shortfall, this permits that within our system. This is going to become more important next year, as we will find out in a few minutes. But I'm not actually anticipating having to do any right now.
Any questions?
Thank you for informing us that it's just allowing you to be able to do it, but right now you don't foresee.
Okay. Can I have a volunteer for the motion? Jerry?
I'll make a motion. We approve Resolution 2014 Interfund Temporary Cash Transfers.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
All right, Deanna, this one's a little longer, but
we can read it. Resolution 20-14, authorization for 2019 interfund temporary cash transfers. Whereas Fort Bragg Unified School District General Fund may experience temporary cash flow needs, whereas Fort Bragg Unified has other funds available to provide temporary transfers to the general fund. Whereas Education Code Section 42603 states the governing board of any school district may direct that monies held in any funds or account may be temporarily transferred to another fund or account of the district for payments of obligations. The transfer shall be accounted for as temporary borrowing between funds or accounts and shall not be available for appropriations or to be considered income to the borrowing fund or account. Amounts transferred shall be repaid either in the same fiscal year or in the following fiscal year. The transfers take place within the final 120 calendar days of the fiscal year or in the flowing fiscal year if the transfer makes place within the final 100 calendar days of a fiscal year. Borrowing shall occur only when the fund or account receiving the money will earn sufficient income during the current fiscal year to repay the amount transferred. No more than 75% of the maximum of monies held in any fund or account during the current fiscal year may be transferred. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Fort Bragg Unified School District authorizes such transfers as may be needed to facilitate cash flow. Passed and adopted this 25th day of June, 2020 by the Board of Trustees of the Fort Bragg Unified School District by the following vote.
Any discussion? Okay, Anna.
Okay, Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
and President Babcock.
Yes. Okay, so we are moving on to 10.4. That is our public hearing, and this is to disclose the 2021 budget. Should I read the background sheet or just open and close it?
I don't care.
Do you have anything to say before? I mean, the discussion's in the next one, but.
Yeah, unless you want me to talk about it in the public hearing and then.
So I would suggest, because we are in a remote setting, that we talk about it in the public hearing so that if the public has comments, we give them time to send an email. So anybody out there listening, if you would like to provide public comment during the public hearing, please use the email at boardmeeting@fbusd.us. And then that way, Anna, if you could monitor, we'll make sure that folks who have a question about the budget have time to ask questions. Will that work for you, Kathy?
Sure, but I think, so we'll just let Wendy talk about the budget, but the actual public hearing is usually very short because there's, right? If I remember.
Right, no, it usually is because, go ahead,
There's
Wendy.
not usually any comment.
Right.
There's very little comment about it.
Right. So if you want to go ahead and give us an introduction, and then that'll allow public if they want, and then we'll just open and close the hearing as deemed appropriate.
Okay. So there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that the legislature and the governor did come to an agreement. And what they're doing is holding us flat from this year to next year, rather than the large reductions that the governor was talking about in May. The bad news is it happened the day after we put the budget out. So I'm really glad we're not printing this, because otherwise they would have been glorified doorstops. So what you're going to be considering approving tonight is really an almost meaningless document. But the good news is we proved that we can do it. If you looked at the 3-year projections, we ended with, I think, about $12,000 at the end of the 3rd year. And that supports the contention about how a cut in this year can impact the out years because of the compounding over the years of that. So it was nice to be able to, do all that work and have everybody sacrifice what they did to be able to get to a place where we know we can. So what's going to happen now is we're going to start all over again. My very strong suggestion is going to be that we maintain a lot of these reductions, because what is going to be triggered if the feds don't come through with a whole lot of money in October is huge deferrals. And by that, we are talking about 27% of our state revenue, and that's about $5 million that we will not get April, May, and June. And we don't know absolutely for sure when we would get it in the subsequent year. The other thing that is very uncomfortable about that is, in the past when this has happened, first of all, the deferrals were not nearly as draconian as this. And they weren't always able to make it all up in the subsequent year. So the deferrals ended up rolling. And so you ended up with, yes, we ended up getting all of our 21-22 money in 22-23, but now we can't afford to pay all the 22-23 money. So you have to wait until 23-24 to get that. So I'm extremely concerned about our cash flow issues, which is why I mentioned the interfund cash transfers. So we're going to have to look at that very carefully and be able to maintain as much cash as we can. If we kept this budget the way it is, I think we'd be pretty close. We might have to move a little bit of cash out of reserves, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We don't have enough details to even guess, other than knowing that it's going to be over $5 million that's going to be deferred if the feds don't come through with money. So we're going to hopefully adopt this document, send it to the county, and there are going to be, I'm going to guess, at least 2 revisions. One, probably in August, and then probably another one at first interim that are going to be significant. Where in the past we are generally able to, be pretty comfortable with where we are and knowing that there might be some adjustments here and there, but this is going to be large changes, significant adjustments to what we're doing. I don't know. I wish I had more details. They are starting to come out a little bit in dribs and drabs, but not anything that's concrete enough to put any real numbers together. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments or anything in the budget that we're looking at to discuss, because like I said, I was going to put a little thing together, and then I thought, well, that's kind of a ridiculous exercise, because this is so different from what it's going to be next week when we start doing it all over again.
And so I just want to add in a few things, because I had some good conversations with people about, well, why are you guys doing this now? Well, first off, we have rules that we need to follow, right? One of the rules is that we have to approve a budget for the following school year that begins July 1 prior to June 30th, and it has to be done in a regular school board meeting with a public hearing. So That's one thing. We had our regular board meeting scheduled for June 25th. This cannot be adopted at a special meeting. So if our regular board meeting is set for June 25th and we set that date back in December, usually that's enough time. This is a unique situation because of what happened with COVID. So then another question I had was, well, why are you guys preparing a budget on from May 15th when the governor and the legislature's already said they're going to duke it out? Because we have to have a budget to give to the board to approve at this meeting prior to June 30th. So that's why we're sitting here. And, my heart goes out to Wendy because when she was showing me the resources and how she had to go through all of them, I just, signed out and said, bye-bye, have a good night. It was hundreds of hours of work to get us to this place. The hard part is we had no choice. We had to go in and do that with that 10% reduction because that's what we were told at the time. And there was no time in between. So you are getting a budget that is largely going to get modified. The wonderful news, like Wendy says, is that we show we can do it, but we're doing it with some major reductions. There's another thing that came out this week with the budget, and it's AB 77. AB 77 has not been passed yet. It's under review. I don't know if review is the right word, but it's going through the discussion mode in our legislature. And if AB 77 passes, and everyone is assuming it will, then we are going to need to bring back some of the people we laid off, because that legislation specifically says that you will not lay off nutrition services workers or transportation or custodial. And we did that on our June 11th meeting. And someone may say, well, Becky, you did it before July 1, but the effective date on that is not until August 11th. It was 60 days after June 11th. So that's going to impact the budget as well. Okay, but that gives a little history of why this all had to happen, because a lot of folks don't understand how wonky, for lack of a better, more intellectual word, that school budgets are. It is quite ridiculous, to be honest with you, and that's my uncensored opinion. I will now mute.
So yeah, like Becky said, I mean, even if I got you some preliminary stuff over the weekend, got the full packet out Monday night, woke up Tuesday morning, and I was not in a very good mood, as everybody in the office will attest, because it just meant we just have to do it all over again. And the whole system, if you want to talk to your legislators, talk about this system, because it makes absolutely no sense that we have to adopt something the same day as the numbers on which we are relying. Because even if it had been an easy fix, I could not have put that together to present to you because it wasn't within 72 hours. So this is where we're at, and we'll just roll with it and change it starting tomorrow.
So my question, Wendy, is just obviously all the school districts are in the same boat, but the county, you don't think will have any qualms with us?
They can't. I mean, we required to give them something. You have to have it 72 hours ahead of the meeting. So I think they're fully aware that everybody's going to be producing. I mean, some districts have already adopted their budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So they're already there. So we'll either have to do a 45-day revision, which is allowable, or if we have information, we'll do that. If we don't, then we'll wait until we do. We don't know what the July tax receipts are going to be. We don't know what the employment situation is going to be. The governor is already kind of putting the brakes on moving towards opening anymore and going back towards mandatory masking, because certain parts of the state are showing a bit of a spike. So, the whole thing is going to be a kind of wait and see.
And I think Wendy said something really important. We don't know what the July 15th receipts are going to be. So even though we have a budget right now from the state, the likelihood of that changing is pretty high. So do we spend more time redoing a budget knowing that come July 15th, that could all shift again. If you're going to approve this budget and we know that we can do it, we're within the parameters of meeting everybody's guidelines that come knocking on our door. And then my direction, or not direction, but my little suggestion would be that we wait for July 15th and we see what that looks like before Wendy puts in more hours into this, only for it to be for naught.
Right. Well, we won't have enough information by July 15th even, because the calculator won't be out probably for a week or so. And that's a huge spreadsheet where we enter a whole lot of assumptions based on what the state is doing. And until that comes out, it's very difficult to try and figure out where we are. So I'm guessing, 45 days is the middle of August, maybe. It just depends on the details and how they come out and, what it's looking like.
So thank you for your rigor, because I know how long I've spent looking through the 160 pages, nowhere near the background, what you need to do to get the numbers in. I always have said over the years, I want the clickables. I want to click on that number and see what all that means. And that's what you're doing behind the scene. This is a lot of paper, but there's so much work behind those numbers. And that's what I always say. I like QuickBooks. I can click on that number and I can see what that is. And so with my little, interaction with the 160 page, it's so frustrating because you've spent all that time, and it's like you said, it's a doorstop. There is some value, because my comment was just to show that it looks like, we are still deficit spending. Our employee benefits and some other areas have gone down because of the COVID, some non-use and some other things. Workers' comp went way down. Some of the grant monies weren't used, so that I was looking at those kinds of numbers. So that probably won't change. So those are positives, except the deficit spending. And then there's account carryovers. So I didn't really have nothing seemed alarming, but it's so disappointing because there was so much happening, from the state that changed, so much that it's, all the work that you put into the reductions from last month, just to know that, as things move, that's your worst case scenario. And it can be, you've got the authority to, if we have to use all that, but if we don't, we can, it gives you the capability of adjusting it. And now you have to adjust even more.
Yeah. So the other thing is, if you notice in the criteria and standards, the METs and not METs, there are more not METs than we generally see. And that's because of this roller coaster of revenues that, they fall outside the norms, and they don't adjust the assumptions and expectations in this system all the time. So it's still, looking for a 1.5 or 2% adjustment. Well, they dropped our revenue by 10%. So you're going to get a lot of not METs because you're going to reduce your expenses. That's going to fall outside the norm. Your revenues are going to fall outside the norm. So there's a lot of that there that will go away because our funding is going to be probably flat, which is still going to be a bit of a challenge because we have statutory costs that are, we have to cover to be able to do that. But it's going to make it a little easier with some of the adjustments we've made, even with having to bring back some of the staff that we originally had laid off.
So I just had two, just wondering if you added more legal, because just with all this new law and trying to interpret what it means for our liability, once the kids are on campus, has that been built in? Maybe increased insurance? I don't know if we're going to have that.
Our insurance went up about 5 to 6% overall. Our legal hours are higher, and I didn't go all the way to what we used this year, but I did increase them from last year because we know we're going to have a lot of questions and things that we're going to have to be relying on them to give us answers. That went up, insurance went up. Our utilities are going to be higher than this year because, first of all, there are rate increases. but there's also been 3 months where we haven't used as much in our utilities this year. So that's helped us be able to roll over more money into next year. I also reduced the sub budget by a lot, thinking that with the potential model we're talking about doing, we can shift people around to cover classes if we need to, rather than having to call subs in. We know that we're not going to eliminate the sub budget completely, but we did cut it back, way back.
Okay, any other questions from the board at this point? Okay, Anna, is anything from the public?
No public comment.
Okay, are we comfortable?
People love this stuff.
All right, does anybody have any problem with opening the public hearing? Okay, so I will open the public hearing at 8:29.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the public hearing. Okay.
Oh, well, I have to officially I think I have to comment, yeah. Anything running in, Anna? Okay. So we will close the public hearing at 8:30 with no public comment, and no comments came in earlier regarding the budget either. Okay. So now we move into official approval of the budget. So I'll ask one more time if anybody has any questions or concerns for Wendy. My only comment, Wendy, is that if you can stall, because there's so many things that you know that are going to change, just to save you that you're not doing it, maybe only have to do it 2 more times versus 4 more times.
3 more times, yeah.
So I don't know I know you're not that kind of person to just let things go, but if you can stall it all to save you time in the long run.
Yeah, I think we'll probably will as far as producing a whole new budget, because like I said, there are a lot of details that we don't have yet. We know approximately what they're thinking about, but there are so many little pieces that we don't know how much this is going to be because they didn't cut it as much. We don't know how much that's going to be because they reduced it a little more. The little shell game they played to get to their agreement means a whole lot of different little details for us. And those, always come kind of dribbling out. There's a budget workshop that I'm signed up to attend on July 14th. So I should get a whole lot of good information there and details. And I'll go, get some guidance from the county office, see what they think about when we should expect to try to revise a budget. I mean, should we just wait till first interim? Should we wait until October to see what the feds do? Or should we do it now with the information we have, for the middle of August? So I'll rely on some guidance from them as well.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board for Wendy or other staff?
Just thank you. I know it was a huge amount of work.
Okay. Well, if I can have a volunteer to approve the budget as it stands for 2021.
I'll move that we approve the item 10.5, the budget for 2021.
And I will second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Anna.
Okay. Trustee Mattson. Trustee Mattson.
He looks like he's trying to unmute. There we go.
Yes.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Trustee Paoli.
Yes.
And President Babcock.
Yes. Okay. All right. We're on to Education Protection Act, Resolution 20-5. Let me pull it up real quick. Okay. All right. Wendy, do you want to give us any background on this one?
Yeah, the Education Protection Act is something that was started in, I want to say, 2012. It was an additional sales tax that was passed by the voters during the last economic struggling time to help schools maintain staffing. And it was specifically earmarked to maintain staffing levels. And so we are only allowed to use that portion of the money for salaries and benefits.
Okay. And this one's a long one. So is there any questions for Wendy on this one? Is this the one where we get a report later on that tells us exactly?
Yeah, there's an annual report of how it was spent, and it was all salaries and benefits. And yeah, so that is that one.
Okay. Connecting the dots.
Yep.
Okay. So if there's no questions, I'll ask for a little signal from somebody so we don't. All right, Diana, thank you.
I move to approve the Education Protection Act Resolution 20-15.
Okay, and a second. Scott, you're unmuted. I'm going to ask you to do it.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I will second. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to skip reading it because of time and it's long. Any discussion? All right.
Read the last two articles.
Okay.
Because it's not just to show that its monies received from the Education Protection Account shall be spent as required by Article 13, Section 36, and the spending determinations or how the money will be spent shall be made in open session of a public meeting of the governing board of Fort Bragg Unified School District. In compliance with Article 13, Section 36E with the California Constitution, the governing board of the Fort Bragg Unified School District has determined to spend the monies received from the Education Protection Act as stated in the budget, dated today.
Okay. We're ready for the roll, I think, Anna.
Okay. President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Mattson.
Yes.
Okay, 10.7.
Kathy?
Oh, yes.
Can we just take a 5-minute quick break?
Sure.
Is that okay, everyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 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 All right. So we are on 10.7. Thank you for everybody coming back. We voted for the write-in person, which is now on the tied ballot, it looks like. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about if we stick with our original person or do we want to switch and go with the Middletown person?
I think we should stick with the same person. Tyler, I know Diana and I have met him. I don't know if anybody else has. He's, I think he would represent us all well. And close to home.
I agree. Becky, did you have any other insight?
No, he's a board member. He's super supportive of the swim team in Ukiah. That's how I met him. So, go Ukiah Dolphins, go Mendocino Coast Sea Dragons. He's a good guy. I don't think you're going to go wrong with Tyler at all.
His biographical sketch was thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Then I will ask for a little hand motion before so we don't talk over each other. Okay, Scott?
I'll make a motion to vote for, is it a resolution? No.
No, I think to use our vote.
Okay, to use our vote for Tyler Nelson for our CSBA regional rep.
Okay. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Diana. Any discussion? Okay.
Okay, Trustee Matson.
Yes.
President Babcock.
Yes.
Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Trustee Paoli.
Yes.
Okay. 10.8. It took us several meetings to get through these, but we are here. Hopefully we stay current. But we pulled some of the optional ones out. We went through them and selected optional paragraphs and left some optional things out as well. Anything come up between the last couple weeks? No concerns or anything? Okay, great. Any questions or concerns from the board? Okay. All right, then let's move. If I can have a motion to approve the board policies, please.
I'll move that we approve item 10.8, board policies. Do you want me to read them off?
Yes, please.
Okay. BP NAR 0420.4, charter school authorization. BP and E 042.0 or 20.41, charter school oversight. BP 0420.42, charter school renewal. BP 0420.43, charter school revocation. BP and AR, food service operations. BP 4112.9, employee notifications. BP and AR 5141.52, suicide prevention. BP and AR 5144.1, suspension and expulsion. BP and AR 6172.1, concurrent enrollment in college. And finally, BP and AR 6142.4, physical education.
And a second.
A second.
Thank you, Jerry. Any discussion?
So I think they were all as written, except the suspension and expulsion had option 2. That still stands. I think Anna.
Did I not make the adjustment in the packet?
No, I didn't see. I didn't verify that, so I was just asking to check.
Yes,
Yeah,
I made all the changes based on what you guys talked about last time.
Great, thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Anna.
Trustee Schneider.
Yes.
Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Trustee Paoli.
Yes.
Trustee Matson.
Yes.
President Babcock.
Yes. Okay. 10.9, we have 2 more intern permits. This seems to be pretty normal in California these days. We just have to acknowledge and tell ETC that we have them.
Yes.
Any questions for Becky? Okay. All right. I'll call for a motion, please.
I move to approve the interim permits for certificated staff.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Okay. President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
Trustee Makala.
Yes.
Okay. All right. 10.10 is a roof project proposal for the bus barn.
So as the background indicates, the roof at the bus barn / warehouse is in dire need of replacement. The bus barn section, we believe it's the original roof. During wind events, we have shingles cover the parking lot, and the warehouse roof has multiple leaks that we're no longer able to repair just because of where the leaks are. So Garland is a roofing contractor. They did the roof at on the ag building. They're pre-qualified in the state of California to provide competitive bids for things such as this. They're approved through DGS and GSA to provide competitive pricing for materials and services. So they're the ones that put this out for bid with contractors that they typically work with, and we're hoping to get this done this summer. So it's pretty steep, but it's almost 10,000 square feet of roof.
What happened with Dana Gray? I know that's not what this is for, but weren't we told that Dana Gray needed some work too?
Yeah, but the damage at Dana Gray isn't as significant as we originally thought.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it's not as bad as was reported to me initially.
And we have the money.
Yes, we have routine restricted maintenance, and there's also some capital improvement money that we have.
Okay, we knew this was coming, right?
Yes.
It's been coming for a while.
Yeah, looks like it.
Okay, any other questions for?
Will that exhaust that account, or it won't? There'll be other projects, because does that get replenished? So I always get it confused with the three. They brought it back that you have to put a certain amount of your overall budget into an account. Is that this account?
That's the routine restricted maintenance account, and that's where I currently have it budgeted.
Okay.
If we end up with other projects, I can move it into the capital development fund if I need to, but right now it's routine restricted.
So it's an account that keeps getting replenished a little bit.
Yeah, we're required to the same level as our reserves.
So Barry, I'm asking the question because I have to. There's nobody locally that was interested or is able to handle anything this big.
At the time, there was nobody who was registered with Department of Industrial Relations. A lot of contractors in our community, they're no longer doing that. There's a few that continue to renew annually, but ones that we've used in the past, they'll let it lapse until they're needed again, and then I have to nudge them to pay their annual fee to get registered so we could use them for their services.
And to me, it's crazy because it's an amazingly easy thing to do.
Well, it really is. I think the reason that most of them shy away from it is because they don't get a lot of public works projects, for one, and the fact that they have to pay $400 a year to register. And I know with a couple of the other roofing contractors in town, the local ones, their biggest nightmare was having their accountants do certified work. That's a real hassle for people that don't do it regularly.
I lost part of it.
So
the payroll reporting is a nightmare for anybody that doesn't do it regularly.
Right.
It's a whole other world of reporting, and it's yeah. So there are a lot of people that just don't want to do it.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I would just say I think it's important just to let all of our viewers remind people that the facilities monies are restricted to facilities. We're not pulling from general funds or anything, but that's what we have to use that money on.
And to piggyback on what Jerry said, I think now is the time, and I don't know what the appropriate way to do that is, to spread the word that we eventually are going to need to do these projects with the bond money. And if any of these local people want to try to put in a bid, that now's the time for them to start the paperwork to do them. It would be nice to put the money locally, but all right, if we don't have anything else, let's call for a motion to approve the bid as proposed.
I move to.
Oh, go ahead.
I move to approve the Garland DBS Inc. roofing project proposal.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Anna.
President Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
and Trustee Matson.
Yes.
Okay. 10.11 is the COVID-19 operation. I believe this is you, Becky, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So this mandate came out with the executive order back in April, and on April 23rd, it was interesting. We had it ready to go, and then we were told that we couldn't submit it because it had to be submitted with our budget. So that's why you're getting it now. So I thought I was doing a really super good job with getting it done early, but no bueno. So we have it now, and it's submitted with the budget. I went over this with Aaron Carter and made sure that we had all the components in it. The county is the one that has to bless this report and then have it on file for CDE. So worked with Aaron Carter. Thank you, Aaron Carter. And you have all the components are there for it to be approved.
Any questions? Now, are you going to have to do this every so many months through this whole pandemic, or?
You know, the rules keep changing. Who knows what we're going to have? We are getting a new template for August 1 for our attendance and accountability plan. So the LCAP is waived for next year, but we have to do a whole nother report that we're getting a template on August 1. So it's constantly changing. There's always more things for us to do. There'll be some variation of something. Got to keep it exciting.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the report?
I'll move that we approve item 10.11 COVID-19 operations written report.
Thank you, Mary. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And sorry. Any discussion? Okay, Anna.
Trustee Matson,
Yes.
Trustee Makala,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
Trustee Paoli,
Yes.
and President Babcock.
Yes. Okay, we are on to, we have made it through our board action items tonight. And moving on to number 11 is information and discussion. And this is our fee schedule. I don't know if Barry or Becky, who wants to give the background or...
So this is being brought up because really Little League, what happened was Little League received a bill that kind of took them off guard. And so the president had come to a board meeting and asked, what protocols do we need to follow to have this re-examined? And so their board president did everything we asked him to do. Came and met with Barry, came and met with Wendy. They submitted their bill for last season. So here we have the fee schedule. I think the difficulty with this is that we have to have something consistent for us to use with groups who want to use our field so that it's fair and in this case, equal, so that we aren't providing a better service from one group to the next. The question that's being brought up is if a group does substantial improvements to our facilities, can that be used as some kind of a trade or an in-like contribution? That's the question right now in looking at the fee schedule. The hard part is that I really believe that question needs to be on a case-by-case basis. And before any kind of improvements are done to our fields, that it needs to be pre-approved by Barry. Essentially, he's our facilities maintenance operation transportation director. And then if there is some request to have those improvements offset the fee, I believe that needs to come to the board for a decision so that you can discuss, do we do it or do we not do it? And the difficulty is, in this particular case, are the improvements that Little League is doing, is that for the greater good of Fort Bragg Unified? And I have to tell you, I don't really know. We improved the fields for our varsity and JV softball and baseball fields because those are our programs. The Little League fields are not our program, so we're not going to put in a new mound or spruce up the dugouts and things like that. But I think it's a legitimate question, and I can understand why, Little League is saying, hey, we did all these improvements, and can we have kind of a break on our bill? So I would just say that in looking at the fee schedule, number one, if we want to do something like that, any kind of improvements, I think we need to have a very clear line drawn in the sand that any improvements, before you touch anything that belongs to Fort Bragg Unified, you get that cleared before you break ground. This has been an issue before in the past, and I really want to reiterate that message. It's no different than someone coming into my home and giving me a brand new deck and pounding into my house and giving me this beautiful gift, but no one asking me if I wanted it. Make sense? So I just want to reiterate that before any improvements are done to Fort Bragg Unified property, any improvements, that approval needs to be received from Barry Silva, which essentially would come from the board as well. So that's number one. Number two, if we're going to offset any kind of improvements to any kind of fee for use, that really needs to be approved by the board. The difficulty with the Little League situation is that they can easily bring us their schedule before the season even begins and says, okay, here's all of our games that we have scheduled and here's our practice schedule. How much will this cost? And we can give them an exact cost for what they give us. What becomes tricky is that it's baseball season. We all become weathermen in baseball season. And as a Fort Bragg High School principal, I can tell you that I watched, and Anna was the athletic secretary during baseball season. And we became weather people. Will it rain? Will it not rain? Do we cancel a game? Do we have a game? So when someone brings us the amount of games that they're going to play, that's a good, strong maybe. But what we do is we only charge for the games played. So if they get rained out, then they don't have a full bill. But if they have more games because you added in an age group or you had Tournament of Champions, then that bill is going to be more than what was projected. And I think that's the difficulty with Little League in this particular case from last year, is that it came out to be more and significantly more from the previous year. The other difficulty is that we have boards on these outside athletic groups that change regularly. I'm part of the Sea Dragon board for the swim team, and that board has turnover. So it's difficult to look at, for me to look at you and say I'm recommending an adjustment in the fee schedule, because Barry Silva can talk to this. In 2018, before this fee schedule was adjusted, he can share with you the amount of hours that he put in to meet with all of the organizations who use our fields, all of the head people of those boards before we adjusted this fee schedule. So I feel that the district has been very transparent in working with this fee schedule, and I respect why Little League was upset because their bill was such an astronomical difference from the previous year. But that was because there were more games. And someone quote me if I'm wrong, but I think they added an age group and they had Tournament of Champions. So those things are going to affect their bill. So when you have boards changing and people accepting budgets for a year, and then we add more to it, you have to know that adding more to it is going to adjust what you're going to pay. Barry, what did I miss?
You hit everything, Becky.
Yeah, and the complaint, the biggest complaint they had was, we were told it was going to be this much, and it ended up being that much. Well, we explained to them very carefully that the estimate we gave them was based on the prior year's numbers, because we looked at the fee schedule and have already made adjustments to it because we realized, well, for softball and baseball who use multiple locations, that paying for every individual field at that location was a little bit much. So we limited it to all of the fields at the middle school. If you use all 3 of those fields in a day, that's an event. If you use all of the fields at Dana Gray in a day, that's one event. So we restructured it to take that into account. And we said, okay, based on this new fee structure, looking at last year's schedule, because that's what we had, this would have been the charge. And the problem was, like Becky said, the subsequent year, they had a whole lot more games, they added an age level, and they had Tournament of Champions. So the bill ended up being a lot more than that. But that was the reason for it. I mean, when we put this fee schedule together, we checked comparables, around Northern California and came up with what we felt was a reasonable fee schedule. And Barry did talk to every user group and let them know these fees are going up. We need to do this. They all said, yeah, we get it. We need to do these improvements to keep the fields decent. And so, we've had just this one sort of hiccup to it. And I agree with Becky. I think that if somebody wants to do something like make some improvements in exchange for their fees, it has to be pre-approved by the district before it happens. And really anybody who does anything to any of our properties should get permission first anyway. Even if it's something we do every year, they should give us a proposal and say, okay, this is what we're planning on doing, and we can bless it. But coming back after the fact and saying, well, we did all this work, you should cut us some slack. It can't work that way. There has to be a system for that. It has to be a process.
And in moving forward, when user groups come and request field use, we can give them an estimate based on what they present us. And we're not trying to be tricky and spike fees or anything like that. We can give an estimate based on what is given. But we need folks to come to us. And especially like with shelter in place right now, I'm being told that there are user groups that are already using our field, not Little League, but there are user groups that are using our fields. And we're trying to figure that out right now because that poses some issues for us as a board. Not that we want to charge people, but we have to make sure that we're dealing with the same set of rules for everyone. So bringing this to you, we want to honor the work that Little League did. Little League said, what do we need to do to bring this to the agenda? And they did everything we asked them to do. And so we want to bring this back to you as a board and say, is this something you want to look at? Are there things that you want to adjust? This is where the discussion happens. And if there's anything that you want to do to address it, now's the time to talk. Unfortunately, you can't talk about anything unless it's agendized. So here it is on the agenda.
So my initial questions or comments is this is just to cover costs. We aren't making a profit. Is that still the case?
Yes,
so people know that
making a profit.
Yeah, it's just like the facility, any other facility. It's just to hopefully, I mean, because we hadn't updated this since, was it like over 20 years or something?
Right, it had been a very long time since we had ever done it. There is a small piece that's built in to go into improvement rather than maintenance. But that's on every fee that we charge for any facility. There's a little piece of that, and that is a very common practice throughout the state.
Okay. And the other, I thought I remember them also bringing up the issue that if, I don't know the numbers, if it was majority, there were some Fort Bragg Unified School children in their league. And so that might be something to discuss if with improvements, you know, that they get ahead, they get it approved in advance, maybe we could get a formula of some kind of, obviously they wouldn't get a credit in equal parts because if it's only benefiting their league, but somehow come up with something that's reasonable that if there's a certain amount of improvements, but it caps out, you can get a credit on your invoice, X amount, whatever that would be, to make it fair for everyone, or even with the kids. If 75% of your league is Fort Bragg Unified, maybe there's a flat rate credit. I don't know. I mean, just to make it so that it's easy to do across the board, whatever that is. But I don't know what kind of staff time that would take to calculate something that's fair.
I'm not sure what the answer is. I had talked to one of the board members from the Little League several months ago when early in this discussion, but I feel like it's going to get, I don't know if uncomfortable, subjective, I don't know what the word is, because if we're going to get pre-approval, it's, I still think it's kind of an odd thing that, again, the mound at, I don't know the names of the fields. I'm sorry, baseball and softball people. But the one that's over by Dietrich Center, you know, that field is really a play field for Dana Gray and Alt Ed. You know, it doesn't need a mound, but then it really looks nice when it's all taken care of. And, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know if I know enough to make that decision when it does come to the board.
Well, and I think that's why Barry's involvement is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain baseball fields, at least if we're talking about the baseball fields, where JV baseball, JV softball, and varsity softball and varsity baseball use specific fields. It's their field. And so if improvements are made to those fields, I can honestly see why we would look at some kind of an in-kind contribution, because our kids and our programs use those fields. You know, we're not trying to price gouge people. We're trying to come up with a fair way to disseminate a fee schedule so that we aren't playing favorites. What makes perfect sense to me is that before any improvements are made, if there are suggested improvements and a team or user group wants to do that for their benefit, they come and talk with Barry and say, hey, we want to make these improvements for our benefit, but we also think the district would benefit from it too. And then they have the discussion with Barry, and Barry can say, hey, board president, let's put this on the agenda for action so that you can have a discussion with the board to see if we want to take a little bit off, and we can figure out what a recommendation would be. But I'm with you, Kathy. I'm not in a place to say, oh, well, that's a really great clay mound. I didn't even know mounds were clay. So I'm not really.
That's not really our job. I mean, this is the conversation I had with the board member is that we are the policy people. So we approved the fee schedule. That's in policy. So I don't know. This is a gray area, and but I feel like it's not our purview to adjust a bill. That's us telling you what to do, and I don't.
And why this is tricky for me is because if someone is asking to do an improvement on our field, If someone is asking to adjust our property, that to me is a little sketchy, that worries me. I don't know if you want your superintendent having that power. To be honest with you, I don't want that power. I want to be able to bring it up into a place where it's more than one mind making that decision. And I know it sounds really minor. You're putting in grass, Scott.
So I know that when I was with the city, that if businesses or people wanted adjustments to things on the fee schedule, it was, well, not everything, but if the manager thought or superintendent thought it was important enough, they would bring it to the council or the board for us to discuss and make a decision. I think Becky's right that she should not, nor does she want to have the ability to not follow the fee schedule without coming to us first. So I think it's appropriate. I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other. It's a tricky situation, but I'm glad it's in front of us. So thanks.
So, and my biggest thing is that you don't want people having backdoor deals, and I don't want to begin that, to be quite honest with you. And I don't know if it's happened in the past, and right now I don't care. We can only move forward from here. So the reality is I don't like that that potential risk of that being brought into the district office. If there needs to be any kind of an adjustment, we keep it above board. You come in and you get pre-approval for whatever modifications you want to make. We get it on the next board meeting agenda. That's going to force people to talk to us and talk to us early. Because if you want something for April 1st or done by April 1st, it means that we've got to have it on the March board meeting agenda. And it really just establishes a very clear route to not being personal. Okay, you want to put in, a brand new, beautiful deck in the middle of Dana Gray Field because that's going to help with whatever. Okay, show us what you want to do. Let's get it on the next board meeting agenda before you break any ground. So all those things I think are important, and it takes out that, hey, Becky, I want you to do me a favor. Not that anybody comes to me for any favors. I don't have that many friends, but it eliminates that.
No, that makes good sense. I think that you do it on a case-by-case basis.
And the sell is going to be is how does it benefit Fort Bragg Unified? If it's a field we already use, like our JV or varsity teams already use, then great. What a good partnership. And I can see that having some kind of in-kind contribution. And I don't mean to put Barry on the spot, but I am. Barry's probably in the best position to really look at that and determine if it warrants any kind of consideration. And, he can look at people and say, you know what, you're barking up the wrong tree. I'm happy to take this to the board, but I'm pretty sure they're going to say no. Barry's going to have that insight because if they're planting, magnolias, that may not be an in-kind contribution.
Well, and also that to have a procedure in place, then we don't encounter, insurance issues or things like that somebody puts something in the wheel. Oh no, our insurance will not allow us to have that.
Well, and to give you an example, we had people paint the fence. Okay, no one asked us. Well, paint got on people's cars. Guess who had to pay for that? Okay, no one asked us if they were going to paint, and it was all very well-intentioned people, right? I mean, they're giving the district a gift. We're going to paint the backstop. Well, that sounds harmless, doesn't it? Until you get the invoices from people who say there's paint on my car. I need a new paint job. And that's one of those head-scratching moments. Hey, guys, don't do anything without asking, please. And Barry will tell you. He'd be the first one to say, no, you don't get to paint. Why? Because you're going to get spray on everybody's car, which is what happened. So, Barry, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to this invigorating conversation.
I don't really have anything to add other than the fact that this only affects Little League because of the fact that they use every field in the district. Soccer uses middle school. Fort Bragg Girls Softball Association uses middle school. That's it. Little League uses every site we have. And the unfortunate thing is that the school district owns every athletic field in this town.
What about soccer, Barry? What about soccer?
They play at middle school. They only play at middle school. So it's easier for those groups that are only using one site. Little League's playing at every site. They're playing just about every day of the week. And I feel like the fee schedule is fair. Wendy and I did countless hours of research to try to figure this out, and this is a pretty good deal. There's a lot of kids that play Little League. So, while they have a scholarship system for the kids that can't afford to play it, they're getting the revenue from somewhere. So, and the fact is that we still have to maintain the fields. Yeah, they're making improvements. However, when they built Piper Field, it was, I'm sure, and there's board minutes where it indicated, you build this field, you maintain this field. This is not the district's responsibility to maintain it. We'll mow it, but that's it. And the other fields that they use at Dana Gray, the softball fields and Pavioni Field, well, yeah, we're going to maintain those because it's our school programs. So
and that's the difference with it. What I will say is that we are all very supportive of Little League because there's a whole bunch of our kids who are in Little League, and we know that any connection to an outside activity other than school is good for kids. We know this. I mean, they're itching to get back on the fields right now, and we're saying, yeah, do it. Let's go. So we really want to honor the good work that Little League does. The difficulty for us is that we have to be able to do it in a fair way. So what I would recommend is that we make it very clear with the field use form that any improvements to any district property needs to be pre-approved, or you run the risk of it coming down, which has happened a couple of times. The other thing we should probably put on our field use and our facility use is that if you do any kind of improvements with our properties without asking us permission, kind of like the whole painting thing, then you are liable for any damages. So we should think about that. But I would just recommend that I believe our fee schedule is fair. If people come to us and get pre-approval for any improvements, and then if they come to us and say, this really is a benefit to the district, what kind of break can we get? Then we can bring that to you. And then it becomes a case by case and not a blanket, a subjective decision that I need to make.
Okay, so that doesn't change.
I think Barry could be, excuse me, Kathy, Barry could be the referee on what he thinks is beneficial to the district or not. And that anybody that does an improvement prior to getting approval doesn't get any credit for it.
Oh,
we've had trouble with this for years and years and years. The fence at Pavioni Field was good. and did it, that's Wendy was on the board back then, I think. And that was when Don Armstrong was superintendent. And I don't know what we need to do to get the message out there that you can't just go out and start building improvements on school property. But,
well, and we took down a fence, if anybody remembers that. Mm-hmm. We showed up on a Monday and there was a beautiful, beautiful fence that was put up. It was beautiful, but we had to take it down.
Okay, so the next steps, do you want us to put our blessing on whatever supplemental form you're going to put on the fee?
Or we can put a proposal together for amended language for facility use and bring it back to you for approval. Okay. To include with facility use fee, with the facility use permitting process.
Okay. Is the board comfortable with adding that? Leave the fee schedule alone, but add pre-approval and case-by-case basis on exchange lesson fee for improvements to this property. Okay, I see thumbs up for Jerry. Diana, yes. Okay. All right. Wendy, Barry, and Becky, you understand okay. You got what you need?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All All right, so item number 12 is our other. So we know that we need to schedule a board meeting for next month. I would assume that you're looking at the last week. If we, I guess, just look at the last Thursday. Is that what we want to? And then we can either do.
That's what I was thinking, July 30th. I don't know what people's calendars look like, but July 30th is the last Thursday of the month. It's three Thursdays, or almost 3 weeks before the start of school if we stick with the 19th, but it would give us it's close enough to the time that if we need to move the start date, we have time to do it.
But is it too close to when staff starts? Right? Because staff on the 12th.
The principals and the counselors are back roughly around that time. I think they're back on the 29th, that 2 weeks before the teachers are back, which is the teachers are back on the 12th. So I think it's enough time for us to make adjustments. To be quite honest with you, I have no intention on changing when the staff calendar begins.
Well, I didn't mean that, but I was thinking more of what they're doing when they come back. Are they learning how to be remote teachers, or are they learning how to take temperature? I mean, I anticipate that we are going to be working with the bargaining units and probably bringing people back a little bit early so we can do some of that. That's what I anticipate. Will it happen? I don't know, because I can't force people to come back. But I think everyone will be eager to try and get a better start on this. We have many employees right now, many of our teachers who are working over the summer for a few days in order to get some things done. So I think July 30th is just fine. If we had a special board meeting on July 30th, I think that would give us enough time. And here's the good news. If it's not enough time, then we only need 24 hours for a special meeting. We say we'll hold it off to the following week. But for right now, let's hold the date just so that, Kathy, you're muted. I was actually thinking it was too late. It was too close to when staff needed, but but then the good thing is that you're close enough that you got to make some decision at that point. So, well,
it calls a sense of urgency.
Right.
Not that we don't have that already, but I think the 30th is fine. I think we'll know enough by then. And if it is too late, then we only need 24 hours to call a special board meeting.
Right. If you feel like the week before, something needs to happen, then you could just, because those last 2 weeks are fine for me.
Me too.
Scott and Jerry, are you good with the 30th? Okay.
I'll plan my trip around it. I'm trying to go camping, but.
Okay.
All right. So June 30th it is.
Oh, and Anna's already got it up on the calendar.
All right. So July 1st, online student registration will open. So same thing as last year.
Okay, hold on, Anna, you're muted.
Yeah, that is not the case. That's a typo, and it is more likely to be around the 13th for the online registration to open. That was my error.
Okay.
But that's going to be all very similar to before, right? Just for families.
It's going to be completely online, so there won't be any coming to registration day, but the online portion is going to be fine-tuned and everything will be done online. And Sarah's been working on it and it's looking good.
So I was thinking this, so I guess Aries has a picture of a student from last year, but I mean, I assume there may not be picture day, and then you just use, all that kind of stuff for.
We're working on those details.
And Life Touch has been in touch with us, and they have been working on some modifications to be social distancing, so forth. So they have some ideas on how they might do it, but I don't think we're quite there yet for that conversation.
And we can do things site by site. We don't have to do it all in one day. We may have to do a little bit of dividing and conquering here in order to keep people apart.
Just these things we took for granted that are no longer the same.
And we'll get back to normal eventually.
And do we have any more kindergarten registrations?
We shut down that particular questionnaire. They're any new enrollments are all coming through one Google form now, so I'd have to go in and separate them out. But I think there's a few, but it's a trickle now at this time.
Yeah. Okay, and then July 3rd, the district office will be closed. And our next regular board meeting will be August 13th. And don't forget that the COVID-19 resource page and the parent resource page has some great things on there for you to help during this time. And those are all linked from the FBUSD homepage. Okay. All right. So it looks like we can adjourn. Jerry?
To adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Nate. Thank you.